welcome to Tales in the Dark. I know many of you enjoy relaxing with these videos, so I recommend turning down the volume until my voice is barely audible. It'll make the experience even more soothing. Before you close your eyes, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you and enjoy listening. Story 1. The oil painting had always been part of the living room when I moved in. An unknown man in an old-fashioned suit, unsmiling. I barely noticed it, until last night when I realized the jacket he was wearing looked exactly like mine. The same stitching, same patch. The scent in the room had changed to less like wood polish, more like sweat and static. I stood there in the dim evening light, staring at the canvas, wondering if my mind was playing tricks. The portrait hung above the brick fireplace, watching the room with dark, indifferent eyes. It had never registered as anything important before, just another fixture left behind by the previous tenant, along with the antique furniture and the persistent draft that whispered through the hallways. I approached it slowly, feeling a strange reluctance in my steps. My fingers reached out, hovering just above the painted surface without touching it. The resemblance was uncanny. The jacket in the portrait was unmistakably the same as the one I'd purchased at a vintage shop just weeks ago, right down to the unique patch on the elbow where the previous owner had repaired it. Coincidence, I muttered to myself, my voice unnaturally loud in the quiet room. Just a coincidence. I took a photo with my phone, zooming in to examine the details. Something cold settled in my stomach as I swiped between the image on my screen and photos of myself wearing the same jacket. The stitching patterns matched perfectly. That night, sleep came fitfully. I dreamt of standing in front of a mirror that didn't reflect my movements correctly, always a half second behind or ahead. When I woke, sweating and disoriented, the first thing I did was walk to the living room. Morning light streamed through the windows, illuminating dust particles that danced in front of the painting. Relief washed over me as I saw that everything appeared normal. The figure wore the same old-fashioned suit I remembered from when I first moved in. I laughed at myself, attributing last night's observation to fatigue and an overactive imagination. Yet as I turned away, something caught my attention from the corner of my eye. Slowly, I faced the portrait again. The tie. The man was now wearing my burgundy tie, the one my sister had given me for my birthday. My heartbeat quickened as I stepped closer, scrutinizing every brush stroke. It wasn't just similar, it was identical, down to the small coffee stain near the bottom that I could never quite remove. I decided to document this. If I was losing my mind, at least I'd have evidence of the progression. I set up a camera on a tripod facing the painting and left it recording while I went to work. The footage showed nothing unusual when I reviewed it that evening, just a static painting in an empty room. But now, standing before it, I could see that the man's shoes had changed to match my favorite leather Oxfords. I began keeping a journal, noting every change, photographing the painting daily. The progression was subtle but undeniable. Each day, another item of my clothing appeared on the figure in the portrait. My watch materialized on his wrist, my scarf around his neck. I covered the painting with a sheet, securing it with tape around the edges. When I pulled it off the next morning, the man was wearing my glasses, the distinctive crack in the left lens perfectly replicated. Sleep became nearly impossible. I would jolt awake with the sensation of being watched, only to find my bedroom empty. The air in the house grew thicker, carrying a scent I couldn't identify, something between ozone and wet soil. In desperate need of answers, I began researching the history of the house. At the local library, I discovered an old newspaper article about the previous owner, a reclusive painter who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The article included a blurry photograph, and though the quality was poor, I recognized something in the man's posture that sent chills through me. Back home, I inspected the edges of the painting's frame, finding a small signature hidden beneath years of dust: self-portrait. That night, I decided to remove the painting from the wall. As I lifted it, I noticed something had been written on the back of the canvas in faded ink: "The observer becomes the observed." I placed the painting face down on the floor, unwilling to look at it any longer. Despite my exhaustion, I fought against sleep, afraid of what might change if I closed my eyes. Eventually, fatigue won. I woke to the sound of something scratching against wood. The painting was still face down where I'd left it, but now a dark liquid seeped from beneath the frame, staining the hardwood floor. It smelled of turpentine and something metallic, like blood. With trembling hands, I turned the canvas over. The portrait had changed dramatically. The man now wore my complete outfit from yesterday, every detail perfect, but most disturbing was his face. The features had shifted, becoming more familiar, more like my own. Not an exact replica, but as if someone had painted my face from memory, getting the general impression but missing the precision. I stumbled back, knocking over a lamp. When the glass shattered against the floor, I heard an echo of breaking glass from within the painting itself. "Who are you?" I whispered to the portrait. "What do you want?" The eyes in the painting seemed to track my movement as I circled the room. When I stopped moving, so did they. When I approached, they widened slightly, as if in anticipation. I noticed my reflection in the window, pale, disheveled from lack of sleep. Behind me, I could see the painting on the wall, but I had left it on the floor. I spun around, finding nothing on the floor where I'd placed it. The portrait hung in its original position, the eyes now unmistakably mine. I reached for my phone to take another photo, but it showed only static when I tried to capture the image. The camera app crashed repeatedly. The only evidence I had were my handwritten notes and the earlier photos, which now seemed insufficient to capture the wrongness of what was happening. That night I packed a bag. Whatever was occurring, I needed distance. As I zipped my suitcase, the lights flickered momentarily. When they stabilized, I noticed with horror that the clothes I had just packed were now worn by the figure in the painting, who stood next to a suitcase identical to mine. I abandoned my packing and fled the house without looking back, driving aimlessly until exhaustion forced me to stop at a small motel. Morning came with momentary peace before memory flooded back. I opened my phone to call a friend and noticed a new photo in my gallery that I hadn't taken a picture of the painting, but different. The background had changed. The figure stood in what looked exactly like the motel room I was now in. Fighting panic, I checked out immediately and drove back to the house, determined to end this. I would destroy the painting, burn it if necessary. The front door was unlocked, though I was certain I had locked it. Inside, the house was unnaturally quiet, as if sound itself was being absorbed. I walked to the living room with steadying breaths, preparing myself for whatever new horror the portrait might reveal. The painting hung in its place, but the canvas was blank, completely empty except for a thin frame of the original background. No figure, no clothes, nothing. A floorboard creaked behind me. I felt a cold breath on my neck. In the window reflection, I could see someone standing behind me, wearing my clothes, with my face almost my face, but with eyes that had never known sunlight. I couldn't move as a hand reached for my shoulder. its touch like dried paint cracking on canvas. The scent of turpentine filled my nostrils as the figure leaned close, whispering words that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Your turn to be framed. Now I sit in front of an easel with brushes I never owned and skills I never learned, painting a portrait of a space that looks exactly like my living room. A blank space waits in the center of the canvas, person-shaped and hungry. Each day I add more detail to the room, knowing that soon I must paint someone standing in it. Sometimes visitors come to admire my work. They say such nice things about my talent, about how realistic my paintings are, about how the eyes seem to follow them around the room. They ask where I learned to paint with such conviction. They ask where I get my inspiration. They ask if any of my works are for sale. I smile and tell them this one might be perfect for them. It would look wonderful in their living room. The frame would match their decor beautifully. All it needs is one final detail. Story 2, I thought it was just settling hairline fractures, nothing unusual, but the cracks widened, curling like fingers pressed from above. The palm formed slowly, day by day, and the ceiling began to sag. The plaster smelled like earth and something bitter, something alive. And sometimes, when I sat too long beneath it, dust would fall like something breathing. At first, I dismissed it. Old houses make strange sounds, develop odd imperfections. I placed a bucket under the center of the hand during rainfall, watching murky droplets collect, tinged faintly amber. The water left rust-colored rings around the plastic rim that wouldn't scrub away. The neighbors never noticed anything amiss when they visited. They would sip coffee in my living room, eyes never drifting upward even as fine particles descended into their cups. I stopped inviting people over after the third finger fully formed. I documented the changes with my phone, cataloging the progression. The photographs should have been evidence, proof I wasn't imagining things. But whenever I reviewed them, the images appeared blurred, as if captured during an earthquake. The outline was there but indistinct, like looking at clouds and forcing meaning onto shapeless forms. Sleep became difficult. The ceiling hand seemed to lower itself during night hours. I would wake to find it closer, the plaster bulging downward, knuckles more pronounced. My dreams filled with the sensation of something pressing against my chest, restricting breath. I contacted a contractor who examined the area with practiced indifference. His flashlight beam passed across the surface, revealing nothing extraordinary to his eyes. "Just water damage," he said, tapping the center of what I clearly saw as a palm with his knuckle. "Could be a leak from upstairs." "This is the top floor," I reminded him. He shrugged, suggested reinforcing the area, and left without providing an estimate. That night I heard scratching above the ceiling. Not rodents or insects, something deliberate, methodical, the sound of fingernails seeking purchase. I set up a digital recorder, placing it on the table directly beneath the formation. The next morning, I listened to hours of static before catching something, a whisper so faint it required headphones and maximum volume. "Let me in." The words repeated at exact 17-minute intervals throughout the recording, each repetition slightly louder than the previous, as if whatever spoke was getting closer to the microphone, closer to breaking through. I began sleeping in other rooms, dragging my mattress from space to space, always checking ceilings before settling. Yet no matter where I relocated, new cracks would appear directly above within days. always beginning as thin lines, always expanding into the unmistakable shape of fingers and a palm. The smell intensified damp soil mixed with copper. It clung to my clothes, my hair. Colleagues mentioned it during meetings. I claimed a plumbing issue, nodded at their sympathetic suggestions about mold remediation. I tried covering the ceiling with plastic sheeting, but it bulged and stretched overnight, conforming to the contours of the hand. The sheets billowed slightly with air currents that shouldn't have existed in the sealed room. In desperation, I mounted a camera, recording continuously. The footage showed nothing unusual during daylight hours, but between 2 and 4 each morning, the plastic would ripple, not from above, but as if something pressed against it from below, from inside my living room. The camera never captured anything visible causing these movements. The night I noticed dark stains forming around the fingertips, I realized I needed to confront whatever was happening. I positioned a ladder directly under the center of the palm and climbed up with a hammer. The ceiling felt warm to the touch, almost feverish. When I tapped it gently, the surface yielded like skin rather than plaster. I retreated, but not before noticing the fingertips had curled slightly, as if reacting to my presence. That night, lying awake in the bathtub where no cracks had yet formed, I heard a long, sustained creak from the living room, the sound of something giving way under pressure. Morning light revealed a small hole at the center of the palm, perfectly round and inky black. No attic or sky visible through it, just darkness that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. When I shined a flashlight upward, the beam disappeared into it without illuminating anything. I sealed the hole with putty, which fell to the floor within hours, dry and crumbled like dead skin. The next attempt involved heavy-duty construction adhesive and a metal plate. This lasted longer, almost a full day, before a dark liquid seeped around the edges, dissolving the adhesive and causing the plate to clatter to the floor. The liquid evaporated rapidly, leaving no residue but filling the house with the scent of wet pennies. I began documenting everything in a journal: measurements, observations, changes in temperature around the formation. The pages filled quickly with increasingly frantic notes. On the 7th day of documentation, I returned to find every page blank, the ink completely gone, as if absorbed by the paper itself. That night the hole widened. I woke to a sound like tearing fabric and found the opening now large enough to insert my hand. The edges pulsed subtly, contracting and expanding in a rhythm reminiscent of breathing. Standing beneath it, I felt a distinct pull, as if the hole created its own gravity. Dust and small objects on nearby shelves seemed to lean toward it, drawn by an invisible force. The voice returned, no longer requiring recording equipment to hear. "Let me in." Clearer now, a whisper with multiple tones overlapping, neither male nor female, neither young nor old. "What are you?" I asked, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. The response came not as words, but as a sudden intensification of scent, soil and metal, and something else, something ancient. The hole contracted slightly, then expanded again, wider than before. I knew I should leave, abandon the house entirely. Every instinct screamed for retreat. Instead, I found myself climbing the ladder again, drawn by a compulsion I couldn't explain. The darkness beyond the hole seemed to reach toward me, not physically, but in a way that tugged at something inside my mind. I raised my hand, fingers trembling just below the opening. "What will happen if I let you in?" I whispered. The ceiling hand's fingers curled downward in response, becoming more three-dimensional, more real. The hole at its center pulsed faster. Let me in and I will let you out. The voice made no sense, yet I understood completely. The room around me suddenly felt like the illusion, a temporary shell, a waiting room. The hole offered something else, something real. I pressed my palm against the edge of the opening. The surface felt like neither plaster nor wood nor any building material. It yielded like flesh, warm and slightly damp. The ceiling hand mirrored my movement, its fingers curling around the hole as if preparing to grip something or someone. I should have run. Instead, I reached higher, my fingertips breaching the darkness. Something gripped back. Cold fingers interlaced with mine, a perfect fit, like my own reflection reaching down. The pull became irresistible. I found myself rising, the ladder toppling beneath me as I dangled from the ceiling, suspended by nothing visible to the external world. Let me in, the voice whispered again, now directly in my ear. Yes, I heard myself say. The ceiling swallowed me whole. Now I exist between spaces, behind walls and above ceilings. I see through cracks and knotholes, through drain pipes and ventilation ducts. I am everywhere and nowhere within the structure. And I watch the new tenant who moved in after my disappearance. Watch as they notice the first small cracks forming on their bedroom ceiling. Watch as they dismiss it as settling, nothing unusual. Watch as the cracks begin to form into familiar shapes. I whisper to them during quiet moments. Let me in, I say, and I will let you out. Soon they will understand, as I now do, that some doors only open one way. Their ceiling is my floor, their walls my corridors. Their reality my prison. My reality their future. Story 3. I found my phone fully charged, even though the cord hung from the outlet loosely. Curious, I followed the wire. It disappeared into the wall, no port, no hole, just vanishing into solid drywall. I pressed my ear against it. There was a faint hum and the scent of ozone mixed with burnt plastic. Then the cord tugged gently, as if something pulled it from the other side. I blinked hard, certain my mind was playing tricks. The white cable simply met the wall and stopped, or rather, continued through it. I ran my fingers along the spot where cord met paint. The surface felt solid, completely normal except for a subtle warmth radiating around the entry point. My phone pinged, a notification from an unknown number. Thank you for the connection. I dropped the device onto my bed, heart thumping against my ribs. This had to be a coincidence, someone with the wrong number texting at the exact moment I discovered this impossibility. Yet when I picked up my phone again, the message was gone. No trace in my notification history. Sleep came uneasily that night, dreams filled with whispering static and the sensation of something cold slithering beneath my skin. I woke drenched in sweat, my phone displaying full battery despite not being connected to anything. The wall incident might have remained a curious anomaly, something to be dismissed in daylight had the changes stopped there. They didn't. My apartment had always been quiet, almost too quiet. Now subtle sounds emerged from the walls, a soft scratching, like fingernails against drywall, coming from inside the structure itself. At first, only near the charger entry point, but soon spreading through my entire living space. I documented everything in a notebook, the sounds, the persistent ozone smell that now permeated my bedroom, the way my phone would switch between apps without my input, opening the camera to record while I slept. Each morning I'd find dozens of photos all black, except for a faint luminescence that seemed to grow stronger in each successive image. Friends noticed changes in me. "You look tired," they'd say, concern etching their faces. "Have you been sleeping?" I hadn't told anyone about the charger or the wall. How could I? Even to my own ears, it sounded absurd. I considered moving out, but couldn't bring myself to leave. Something held me there, a compulsion to understand what was happening. I bought equipment, sound recorders, infrared cameras, even a stud finder to examine the wall. The stud finder went haywire near the entry point, its lights flashing erratically before the battery drained completely. The recordings proved more illuminating. Beneath the surface scratching, voices whispered too faint to make out words, but distinctly human in cadence. I enhanced the audio through software, cleaning up background noise. "We've been waiting," came the whisper, barely audible even with enhancement. The connection grows stronger. I tore into the wall with a hammer one night, desperate for answers. The drywall crumbled easily enough, revealing standard insulation and wooden framing completely normal. Yet the charger cord still disappeared into solid material, defying physical laws. I followed it with my flashlight, watching as it passed through wood and insulation without any hole or opening. My hand trembled as I reached toward the impossible cable. The air around it seemed to warp slightly, reality bending in subtle ways that made my eyes water. When my fingers touched the cord, a jolt ran up my arm, not electricity, but something else. Information, data. For one breathtaking second, I understood something vast and incomprehensible. Then it was gone, leaving me slumped against the broken wall, nose bleeding, ears ringing. My phone contained new photos when I checked it next. Images I never took, showing my own face while I slept, my eyes open but vacant, my mouth moving, forming words I couldn't remember speaking. I sealed up the wall, applying fresh drywall and paint. The cord remained, still vanishing into solid matter. My attempts to remove it failed. Cutting it merely resulted in the severed end growing back overnight, finding its way into the wall again by morning. The dreams intensified, no longer just static and cold sensations, but vivid scenes of endless corridors inside my walls. Spaces that couldn't exist given the dimensions of my building. In these dreams, I walked those impossible hallways, drawn toward something waiting at the center. My phone became unpredictable. Calls connected to numbers I never dialed. Voices on the other end speaking backwards or in languages I didn't recognize. Battery life extended beyond manufacturer specifications, weeks without charging, yet always displaying full power. I installed cameras to monitor myself at night. The footage showed me sleepwalking, placing my hands against various walls throughout my apartment, lips moving in one-sided conversations. More disturbing were the moments when shadows moved independently of their sources, stretching toward me as I slept. My research became obsessive. I looked into the history of the building, finding nothing unusual. I studied quantum physics, theories of parallel dimensions, anything that might explain what was happening. Nothing provided answers that satisfied me. The connection point in the wall began to change. What started as plain white paint developed subtle discoloration, first a faint yellowing, then deeper amber tones that spread outward in concentric circles. The texture changed too, becoming slightly tacky to touch, warm and yielding like skin. I documented each change meticulously, my notebook filled with observations, sketches, theories. Sometimes I'd find additions in my own handwriting that I had no memory of making. notes about the other side, and the thinning barrier written in frantic script. Then came the night everything changed. I woke to find my phone hovering above my bed, suspended by the charger cord, which now extended from the wall like a taut fishing line. Light pulsed along its length, not electrical illumination, but something organic, flowing from the wall into my device. The screen displayed a message: "Connection complete. Thank you for opening the way." As I watched, frozen in terror and fascination, the wall around the entry point began to ripple. The discolored section pulsated rhythmically, expanding outward with each beat. The scratching sounds intensified, no longer coming from within the wall but from beyond it. I should have run. Any rational person would have fled the apartment, never looking back. Instead, I approached, driven by a curiosity that overrode my fear. The notebook clutched in one hand, pen in the other, ready to document whatever came next. The rippling section of wall split open with a sound like tearing fabric, not breaking or crumbling as drywall should, but parting like lips, revealing darkness beyond. The phone cord stretched taut, pulling my device toward the opening. I grabbed it instinctively, unwilling to lose my only link to normality. That was my mistake. The moment my fingers touched the phone, the connection completed. Information flowed both ways now, from the opening into my device, from my device into me. Images flooded my mind, vast networks of corridors and chambers existing in the spaces between walls throughout countless buildings, inhabited by entities that fed on electromagnetic radiation and data. They had been watching our world through our devices, studying us, learning. My peculiar wall outlet had been their first successful attempt to reach through a test connection that proved more successful than they anticipated. The opening widened further. Something emerged, not a physical entity as we understand them, but a distortion of reality shaped vaguely like a hand, reaching for me. It touched my face with appendages that felt like static electricity, sending waves of information directly into my brain. They needed bodies, physical anchors in our world. My curiosity had made me the perfect candidate. I fought against the intrusion, dropping both phone and notebook, stumbling backward. The cord stretched impossibly, still connected to both wall and phone, now resembling an umbilical cord more than electronic equipment. It pulsed with light that cast no shadows. My skin began to change where the entity had touched me, taking on the same amber discoloration as the wall. I could feel myself being rewritten on a cellular level, becoming a conduit, a doorway. Using the last of my willpower, I grabbed a kitchen knife and slashed at the cord. It severed with a shriek that existed outside audible spectrum, but rattled my bones nonetheless. Fluid that wasn't quite liquid spurted from the cut end, sizzling where it touched the floor. The opening in the wall contracted violently, pulling the severed cord back inside before sealing shut. The discoloration remained, but the pulsing stopped. For now, the connection was broken. But part of me had already changed. The amber patch on my skin remained, sometimes warm, sometimes cold, always sensitive to electronic devices nearby. My phone never worked properly again, but I didn't need it to. I could feel signals passing through the air, could sense data traveling through cables and walls. I moved away, leaving everything behind except my notebook. I live differently now, away from technology as much as possible. But I know they're still out there, in the spaces between walls, searching for new connections. Sometimes I wake to find my fingers pressed against the wall of my new place, unconsciously tracing patterns on the paint. The amber patch spread slowly across my skin, a millimeter each week. I document its progress faithfully. My new neighbors complain about electrical issues, devices charging without being plugged in, strange calls from unknown numbers, whispers through unpowered speakers. I should warn them, but who would believe me? Who would understand that our addiction to constant connection has created pathways for something else to connect to us? Instead, I watch and wait and write everything down. The wall in my bedroom has developed a faint discoloration recently. I tell myself it's water damage or mold. But sometimes, when everything is quiet, I press my ear against it and hear something breathing on the other side. Story 4, I hadn't been down there in weeks. No leaks, no pipes, nothing unusual. But the scent hit me as soon as I opened the door. Rain-soaked concrete, fresh moss, and something warm underneath, like soil after a storm. The floor was bone dry, but my socks felt wet. I touched the concrete with my fingertips, dry yet somehow slick, as if the moisture existed in a layer just above the surface. My skin came away clean, but a faint earthy scent clung to my fingers. I wiped them against my jeans, unsettled by the contradiction. The basement had always been unremarkable, just storage boxes, holiday decorations, and forgotten exercise equipment. Yet standing at the bottom of the stairs, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The shadows seemed to pool differently in the corners, stretching toward the center of the room rather than away from my flashlight. I walked deeper inside, past the shelves of canned goods and old photo albums. My footsteps echoed strangely, with an almost liquid quality, as if I were walking on shallow water. Each step produced tiny ripples of sound that lingered too long. That was when I noticed the wall. The far corner where I kept my camping gear had always been painted the same beige as the rest of the basement. Now it appeared darker, with a pattern of faint discoloration spreading outward. Not water damage, more like a stain that changed as I stared at it, breathing and expanding almost imperceptibly. I approached slowly, raising my hand to touch it. The air grew thicker as I moved closer, heavy with that rain smell that had no business being in my dry basement. My fingers trembled inches from the wall. I pressed my palm against it. The wall was warm, not the ambient coolness of concrete, but a living warmth that seemed to pulse gently against my skin. I jerked my hand back, heart pounding. "Hello," I called out, immediately feeling foolish. No one answered, yet the silence that followed felt attentive, as if the room itself had paused to listen. I needed to document this. I hurried upstairs for my phone, needing to photograph the strange stain. When I returned, camera ready, the discoloration had spread further, now covering nearly the entire wall. Through the camera screen, the stain appeared to shift and swirl like ink dropped in water. Yet when I looked directly at it, it seemed almost static. The photos came out blurred, no matter how still I held my hand. In each attempt, the stain appeared in a different configuration, as if it had moved between shots. I recorded a video instead, narrating what I saw in a whisper that seemed appropriate for the heavy air. The basement smells like rain. The wall is changing. I don't understand what's happening. When I played back the recording, my voice sounded distant and distorted, overlaid with a soft rushing sound like gentle rainfall. But in the background, almost too faint to hear, was another voice not speaking, but humming a melody I almost recognized. I hadn't heard anyone else. Over the next few days, I became obsessed with the basement. I set up a camera to record continuously, taking notes on the changes in temperature, smell, and the growing stain. The notes became increasingly difficult to write. Ink would smear unexpectedly, or my handwriting would drift into patterns I didn't recognize before I caught myself. The recordings revealed nothing concrete, just subtle shifts in shadow and strange audio anomalies, clicks and whispers that seemed to respond to my movements. The stain continued to spread, now covering 2 walls and creeping across the floor. When I approached it, I could feel a slight vibration, like the purr of a large animal. I brought down different lights, trying to understand the phenomenon better. Under ultraviolet light, the stain glowed with faint bioluminescence, revealing intricate patterns that resembled neural networks or river systems viewed from above. Under regular lighting, these patterns vanished, leaving only the amorphous darkness. I found myself spending more time in the basement, sometimes sitting for hours watching the stain pulse and shift. The rain smell grew stronger, accompanied now by petrichor and something else, something ancient and somehow familiar. My clothes were always dry when I came upstairs, yet they carried this scent with them, lingering for days. During one session, I dozed off in the folding chair I'd set up for observation. I dreamed of standing in a vast open space under a dark sky, rain falling all around me but never touching my skin. The ground beneath my feet was both solid and somehow fluid, rippling with my every step. In the distance, something enormous moved just beyond my vision, displacing the air in waves I could feel against my face. I woke with a start, disoriented. The basement had changed again. The stain had retreated from the walls, but now formed a perfect circle on the floor around my chair. I stood carefully, not wanting to step in it, but as I moved, so did the circle, maintaining the same distance from me in every direction. That was when I began to understand it wasn't following me. It was emanating from me. I ran upstairs and showered, scrubbing my skin until it was raw. The water running down the drain looked clear, but the drain itself made an unusual gurgling sound, almost like words in a language just beyond comprehension. Sleep became difficult. I would wake from dreams of vast underground spaces to find my sheets damp with what smelled like rainwater, but evaporated without a trace within minutes of waking. My skin developed a subtle sheen that caught the light strangely, and sometimes, when passing mirrors, I glimpsed something moving beneath my surface, like shadows swirling under ice. I stopped going to the basement for several days, hoping whatever was happening would subside. Instead, the phenomena began manifesting throughout the house. The rain smell would appear suddenly in rooms I was occupying. Surfaces felt slick to my touch but appeared dry to others. Light fixtures dimmed when I entered rooms, brightening again only gradually. Finally, desperate for answers, I contacted a specialist in environmental phenomena. When she arrived, her instruments registered nothing unusual: normal humidity levels, no mold spores, no gas leaks. She looked at me with professional concern as my frustration grew. "Show me exactly where you first noticed these issues," she said. I led her to the basement door, my hand shaking as I reached for the knob. As we descended the stairs, my dread mounted with each step. The basement looked perfectly normal to me for the first time in weeks. No stain, no unusual shadows, not even the rain smell. She conducted her tests methodically, finding nothing. When she finally turned to leave, I caught her looking at me with an expression that suggested she was considering explanations beyond the scientific. "Wait," I said, noticing something as she packed her equipment. Her footprints on the concrete floor were visible, slight dust outlines where she had walked. Mine were absent, as if I had never disturbed the floor at all. After she left, I returned to the basement alone. Standing in the center of the room, I whispered, "What are you?" The air condensed around me, heavy and electric. The rain smell returned, stronger than ever. I felt pressure against my skin from all directions, not unpleasant but insistent, like an embrace. In the corner of my vision, the stain reappeared on the wall, but different now, organized into shapes that almost resembled writing. As I stared, the patterns began to make a terrible kind of sense. Not words exactly, but intentions, invitations, a door opening between places. I understood then what had been happening since that first day. The basement hadn't been changed by something external. Something within it, within the very fabric of the space, had recognized something within me. Something that had always been there, dormant, until the moment I noticed that impossible rain smell in a dry basement. I approached the wall now with my hand outstretched, no longer afraid but curious. The surface yields slightly under my touch, depressing inward about half an inch before stopping. Then it pushes back, gentle but firm, like a handshake. The stain spreads up my arm, cool and warm simultaneously. I should be terrified, but instead, I feel a profound sense of recognition. The patterns on my skin match those forming in my mind, neural pathways and river systems and root structures all merging into networks of connection. I pull my hand back and look at my palm. The skin appears normal, but something moves beneath it, something that has always been there but was sleeping until now. When I close my eyes, I can see vast landscapes of possibility unfolding. The rain smell surrounds me completely now, and I understand it isn't rain at all, it's the scent of boundaries dissolving, of something reaching through from elsewhere, drawn by its counterpart within me. I no longer document these changes, there would be no point. The camera sees nothing, the recordings capture only static, my notes blur into undecipherable patterns. This transformation is meant for me alone. My reflection has begun to move independently of me, just slightly a microsecond delay here, an anticipatory gesture there. When I sleep, I dream of walking through doors that shouldn't exist, into spaces that fold in on themselves endlessly. I still go about my daily life. I work, I eat, I maintain the appearance of normalcy. But the basement calls to me constantly, a gravitational pull I can no longer resist. Today I noticed the first visitor, a small shadow form that skittered across the far wall before disappearing into the floor. Not frightening, merely curious, like a scout sent ahead to assess me. Tonight I will return to the basement with no recording devices, no lights, nothing to interfere with what needs to happen. I will sit in the darkness and wait. The stain has been patient with me, allowing me time to understand and accept. Now I must be patient in return. I know now that the basement never smelled like rain. That was simply my mind trying to categorize something it had never encountered before. What I was sensing was the breath of something vast pressing against the membrane between realities, drawn by its reflection inside me. I am changing, becoming a doorway, and soon, whatever waits on the other side will no longer need to knock. Story 5, static flickered across the screen as I walked by, but something stopped me, a frame, a flicker of color I recognized. I turned it on. There in black and white was my kitchen. Same towel over the chair, same empty coffee cup. Only I wasn't in the room, but the shadow of someone else was. At first I thought it might be a prank, some elaborate setup by a friend with too much time on their hands. The image was unmistakably my kitchen, down to the small chip in the countertop near the sink. My fingers traced the remote's buttons, pressing each one methodically, but the channel wouldn't change. The volume remained muted no matter how I adjusted it. "Hello," I called out, feeling foolish for speaking to an inanimate object. The shadow on the screen didn't respond, but it moved slightly, drifting from one corner to another in a manner that seemed intentional, deliberate. I approached the television, placing my palm against the cool glass. The static buzzed against my skin, a gentle vibration that felt almost alive. When I pulled my hand away, a faint outline remained on the screen, a perfect imprint of my hand that slowly faded. The coffee cup on the screen moved. Not by much, just an inch to the left, but I hadn't touched it. I hadn't been in the kitchen since morning. My breath caught as I watched the shadow grow longer, stretching across the tile floor of my kitchen like spilled ink. I walked to my actual kitchen, my footsteps unnaturally loud in the silence of my home. Everything was exactly as shown on the television: the towel, the coffee cup, except the cup was where I'd left it, not where it had moved on screen. And there was no shadow stretching across my floor. When I returned to the living room, the image on the television had changed. Now it showed my hallway, the one leading to my bedroom. The perspective was from floor level, distorted slightly at the edges, as if filmed through a fisheye lens. Something cold settled in my stomach. I hadn't installed cameras. There was no surveillance system in my home, yet here was footage, playing in real time. I reached for my phone, thinking to call anyone, but stopped when I noticed the screen of my device displaying the same imagery as the television. My hallway from floor level with that same distortion. A soft noise came from my kitchen, the gentle clink of ceramic against countertop. I froze, afraid to turn around. On the television screen, the perspective shifted, now showing my living room where I stood with my back to the kitchen. I could see myself on the screen, rigid with fear, phone clutched in my hand. The shadow behind me on the screen grew taller. I spun around, but my kitchen was empty. When I turned back to the television, the image had changed again. Now it showed my bedroom, dark except for a sliver of light from the partially open bathroom door. My fingers felt numb as I switched off the television. The screen went black for half a heartbeat before flickering back to life on its own. This time, it showed my front door from the outside, as if someone or something was waiting to come in. I pulled the plug from the wall. The television screen remained illuminated. The rational part of my mind cataloged explanations: hallucination, elaborate hoax, carbon monoxide poisoning. But none of these explained the cold sweat beating on my forehead or the electric tension in the air. That night I slept on my couch, the television unplugged but still glowing with scenes from various rooms of my home. I woke to find it showing my sleeping form from above, an angle impossible without equipment installed in my ceiling. In the morning light, I convinced myself it had been a dream, despite the television still displaying my home from various angles. I forced myself to go about my routine, brushing my teeth, making coffee. Each time I entered a room, the television would switch to show a different part of my home, always where I wasn't. I began documenting everything, taking photos of the television screen with my digital camera. The images came out distorted, with strange pixelated artifacts that looked like faces in the static. In one particularly disturbing photo, the shadow had taken a more defined shape, almost human, but wrong in subtle ways. My research led nowhere. No one had experienced anything similar, at least not according to any source I could find. Electronics experts told me what I described was impossible without sophisticated equipment and access to my home. By the third day, the footage on the television began to deviate from reality. Small things changed position without my touching them. A book moved from the shelf to the table. My keys disappeared from the hook by the door, only to appear in my refrigerator. I started leaving notes for myself, reminders of where I put things, confirmation that I was still sane. But sometimes, while watching the television, I'd see my handwritten notes change their messages before my eyes. "It sees you," one note read, though I had written, "Call electrician." The shadow grew more bold, moving freely through my home on the screen. Sometimes I caught glimpses of it from the corner of my eye in the real world, a darkness that disappeared when I turned to face it. I stopped sleeping, afraid of what might happen if I closed my eyes. The television began showing scenes from my past memories I recognized but couldn't recall being recorded. Me as a child, opening birthday presents, my first apartment, people I once knew but had forgotten. My reflection in mirrors started to lag behind my movements, continuing to stare at me after I'd turned away. The television captured this too, showing my reflection moving independently, its mouth forming words I couldn't hear. I tried to leave, packing a bag with essential items, but each time I approached my front door, the television would switch to show the outside of my home, where the shadow waited, larger and more defined than ever. Water from my faucets ran black for brief moments before clearing again. The television documented this faithfully, though when I collected samples in jars, they appeared normal clear water that smelled faintly of rust. Desperate for answers, I placed a camera on a tripod facing the television, hoping to compare the footage it recorded with what I was seeing. When I played back the recording, the television screen in the video appeared normal, showing regular programming, not the surveillance of my home. Yet another camera I set up in my kitchen caught movement, drawers opening slightly, cabinet doors ajar with no one visible causing these actions. When I watched this footage while the television displayed my kitchen in real time, I could see the shadow manipulating these objects on screen, though nothing appeared on my camera footage. My phone began receiving text messages from my own number, containing single words that formed incomplete sentences when placed together. I am becoming real. The television now showed rooms in my home that didn't exist, spaces beyond doors that should have led outside, corridors that extended impossibly through walls. And in each of these impossible spaces, the shadow waited, more substantial with each passing day. One morning, I noticed my coffee cup had moved on its own, not on the television screen, but in my actual kitchen. Just an inch to the left, just like I had seen days earlier on the screen. Reality was catching up to whatever the television showed. That night, staring at the screen as it displayed my empty bedroom, I watched as the covers on my bed pulled back as if inviting me in. An indentation formed on the mattress, the shape of a body that wasn't there. My reflection in the bathroom mirror called to me, its lips moving independently of mine, forming one word over and over. Come. I realized then what was happening. The television wasn't showing surveillance footage of my home. It was showing a version of reality slightly ahead of mine, a reality where the shadow had already taken root. And now that reality was bleeding into mine. I sit writing this final note, watching the television as it shows me hunched over this very paper. On screen, the shadow stands behind me, its form now almost fully realized, its hand, if you can call it that, resting on my shoulder. I feel nothing there, not yet, but I know I will soon. The television now shows every room in my home simultaneously, split into sections on the screen. In each space, the shadow version of me goes about daily tasks with mechanical precision. I watch as it sleeps in my bed, uses my toothbrush, wears my clothes. Its movements are becoming more natural, more human. Mine are becoming less so. My hands tingle constantly now, a numbness spreading up my arms. When I look at them in the mirror, they appear normal. But on the television screen, they're fading, becoming translucent. The shadow is replacing me bit by bit, in small increments I can only see on the screen. Last night, for a brief moment, the television showed something new: the outside world. Streets filled with people going about their lives. Each person had a shadow walking in perfect sync with them, identical in every way except for their eyes, which looked directly into the camera. Directly at me. I know now why the shadow chose me, why it came through my television. I was watching, I was receptive. I invited it in with my attention, my fear, my documentation. My coffee grows cold beside me as I write these words. On the television, the shadow version of me picks up its cup and drinks, its movements perfectly mimicking what would have been mine. The boundary between what's on screen and what's real has worn paper thin. The edge of my vision darkens, a peripheral shadow that grows with each passing moment. Soon I will be nothing but a flicker on a screen, watching as something else lives my life. And when the television finally goes dark, I wonder if anyone will notice the difference in me. If you're reading this, watch what you watch. Be careful what you invite into your home through screens that never truly turn off. Because something might be watching back, waiting for an invitation to step through. And once it starts replacing you, the process can never be reversed. Story 6, it started with the trees. They used to be 50 feet from my back porch. Now they brush the steps. Each morning, branches reach farther out, leaves scattered like footprints. The ground smells of pine and something rotting beneath. And last night, I heard snapping twigs outside my bedroom window. I've lived in this house for 7 years and never noticed anything unusual about the forest until recently. Winter had faded into spring when I first perceived the change during my morning coffee ritual. The distance between my porch and the tree line seemed somehow wrong. I dismissed it as my imagination playing tricks, perhaps the new foliage making the forest appear fuller, more present. The next morning I took my coffee outside again and felt my throat tighten. The tree line had undeniably shifted, not dramatically, but enough that I questioned my sanity. I set my mug down and walked to the edge of my lawn, counting my steps, 43. I was certain it used to be more. I took photos with my phone. Documentation seemed important, though I couldn't articulate why. Each morning I would photograph the trees from the same spot on my porch, building a visual diary of impossibility. The forest crept forward steadily, inexorably. No one else seemed to notice. My neighbor came over to borrow sugar and mentioned how lovely the trees looked this season. When I asked if she noticed anything strange about them, she glanced toward the forest and shook her head with a pleasant smile. "They're just trees," she said. But they weren't just trees, not anymore. I started researching plant movement, geological shifts, anything that might explain what I was witnessing. My search history became a catalog of increasingly desperate queries. Can forests move turned into am I hallucinating, and eventually what to do when reality breaks. One night I fell asleep at my desk after hours of fruitless research. I awoke to a sound, soft, rhythmic scratching against my window. A branch tapped the glass, though when I'd gone to sleep, the trees had been yards away from the house. I approached the window, heart hammering. The branch followed my movement, its scratching becoming more deliberate. I backed away, unable to breathe. The branch continued to trace my path across the room. Morning arrived and the forest had retreated to its previous position. I questioned whether the night's events had been a nightmare. The photos on my phone told a different story, a clear progression of encroachment. Yet that day, the pattern changed. When I returned from grocery shopping, the trees had moved again. They no longer waited for darkness or my absence. They moved when they wanted to. The forest began to infiltrate my home in subtle ways. Pine needles appeared in my bed, though I never opened my windows. Moss grew in damp corners of my bathroom overnight. The smell of rotting vegetation permeated my clothes, my furniture, my skin. I installed cameras around the property. The footage showed nothing unusual during the day. At night, the recordings became distorted when facing the forest, static and digital artifacts obscuring whatever might be happening beyond the tree line. In one particularly disturbing segment, shadows moved between the trees with a fluidity that seemed almost deliberate, almost intelligent. My sleep deteriorated. When I did manage to drift off, I dreamed of roots growing through my floorboards, of branches reaching through windows to caress my face. I dreamed of being pulled into the dark, of becoming part of the loamy soil. I tried cutting the trees back. The chainsaw felt heavy in my hands as I approached the nearest trunk. The moment the blade touched bark, a high-pitched wail emerged from somewhere within the forest depths. Not animal, not human, something between. I dropped the chainsaw and ran inside, locking every door and window. That night, the forest punished me for my transgression. Branches beat against the house with fury, leaving scratches in the paint and cracks in several windows. The wind carried whispers that sounded almost like words in a language I almost understood. I stopped trying to fight it after that. Instead, I began leaving offerings at the edge of the encroaching tree line. Fresh water in bowls, fruits, small trinkets. I had no rational explanation for this behavior, but it felt right, necessary. Sometimes, by morning, the offerings would be gone. On those days, the forest seemed to hold its position, granting me a temporary reprieve. My friends stopped visiting. My calls went unreturned. During a rare video chat, my sister asked why I looked so thin, why my eyes seemed so sunken. She commented on the strange shadows behind me, though I sat in a well-lit room. When I turned to look, I saw nothing unusual. When I turned back to the screen, she was gone. The call had ended. I've begun to wonder if the forest is consuming more than just physical space. My memories feel fragmented now. I struggle to recall a time before the trees began their advance. Was there ever such a time? Last night I woke to find ferns growing through my mattress. When I tried to remove them, my fingers passed through the stems as if they were incorporeal. Or perhaps I was the one becoming less substantial. This morning, bark has begun to form on my left arm. It doesn't hurt. The sensation reminds me of putting on a comfortable glove. My fingers still work, though they've stiffened somewhat. Green shoots grow from my forearm, unfurling tender leaves. I should be horrified, but I feel only a strange, calm acceptance. The bathroom mirror reveals patches of moss spreading across my back, following the curve of my spine. My hair has become like fine root systems, reaching toward the sky when I step outside. The transformation accelerates with each breath I take. I understand now. The forest wasn't invading my space, it was reclaiming what was always part of it, including me. My house now stands in the heart of the woods. Sunlight filters through the canopy above what used to be my roof. Birds nest in my kitchen cabinets. Deer drink from the stagnant water in my bathtub. Nature has erased the artificial boundaries I once maintained. I sit on what remains of my porch, my body now more tree than human. My consciousness spreads through a network of roots and mycelia connecting thousands of living organisms. I feel the seasons change in my marrow. I taste sunlight. I communicate through chemical signals sent through soil and air. The forest behind my house got closer every morning until there was no house, no me, no separation. Only forest, only belonging. And somewhere within the woods, something watches from between the trees, waiting for another human to build another house at the edge of our domain. We will welcome them, branch by branch, root by root, until they too understand what it means to truly come home. Story 7, I'd been feeding it for weeks, scruffy, gray, quiet. But yesterday, instead of waiting by the dish, it dropped something onto the porch, a small human tooth. Clean, no blood, just smooth enamel and a sharp root. The cat sat still, watching. The air carried a coppery scent, and for the first time I noticed it had no shadow. My fingers trembled as I picked up the tooth. It felt cold, unnaturally cold, like it had been stored in ice, yet the morning was warm. The cat's eyes, amber flecked with green, never left mine. Its tail remained perfectly still. "Where did you get this?" I whispered. The cat blinked slowly, deliberately, then turned and walked toward the edge of my property where the woods began. At the tree line it stopped, looking back at me, waiting. I should have called someone. I should have dropped the tooth, gone inside, locked the door. Instead, I slipped the tooth into my pocket and followed. The woods seemed different that day. The usual bird songs had fallen silent. The familiar path felt longer, winding through trees that seemed to lean inward as I passed. The cat moved ahead, stopping occasionally to ensure I was still following. We reached a clearing I'd never seen before. In the center stood an old well, its stone rim crumbling, covered by a weathered wooden lid. The cat jumped onto the edge and pawed at the wood. My heartbeat quickened as I approached. The lid moved easily despite its apparent weight. Inside, darkness swallowed the light. A musty, damp smell rose from below, mingled with something sweeter, sickly decay masked by perfume. I shined my phone light downward. The beam caught something white against the black, another tooth, and another. Dozens scattered across the bottom of the dry well. My stomach lurched. What is this? The cat made a sound, then not a meow, not a hiss, but something between speech and song. A vibration that made my ears ache. I backed away. The cat jumped down from the well and circled my legs, brushing against me. When it touched my ankle, a chill raced up my spine, settling behind my eyes. Suddenly, I could see things differently. The clearing wavered like heat rising from asphalt. The ground beneath the well seemed to pulse, as if breathing. And the cat's outline blurred at the edges, expanding into something larger, more complex. "What are you?" My voice sounded thin, distant. The cat sat before me, its form stabilizing again. It opened its mouth, wider than any cat should be able to, and inside I saw not teeth but tiny mirrors, each reflecting a different face. Children, adults, elderly, eyes wide with fear or dull with resignation. I ran, branches whipped my face as I crashed through underbrush, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The tooth in my pocket grew heavier with each step until it felt like I was dragging a stone. When I finally burst from the tree line, I collapsed onto my lawn. Night had fallen. Impossible I'd entered the woods mid-morning. Inside my house, I emptied my pocket. The tooth tumbled onto my kitchen table, followed by dirt and fragments of dried leaves. I examined it under the harsh kitchen light. Perfectly formed, a child's molar. I placed it in a glass of water, not knowing why. Sleep refused to come. Every sound, the house settling, the refrigerator humming, seemed suspicious. Each shadow in the corners of my bedroom deepened, breathing with patient malice. Morning brought no relief. The tooth in the water glass had changed. The root had lengthened, curling like a tendril. The water had turned faintly pink. I heard scratching at my front door. The cat had returned, but not alone. 6 others sat in a semicircle on my porch, each gray, each identical, each watching me with the same amber-green eyes. Each missing its shadow. One by one they dropped their offerings, a fingernail, a small bone, a lock of hair tied with thread, a silver filling. I slammed the door and drew the curtains. My phone showed no signal. The landline produced only a sound like distant waves. That night I heard digging outside my window, soft, persistent scraping. When I finally gathered the courage to look, I saw nothing but freshly turned soil in my garden. The cats were gone, but they had left something a perfect circle of small holes, each just large enough for a tooth, or a bone, or a fingernail. The tooth in the glass had disappeared. In its place, a tiny sprout with leaves like polished bone. I didn't sleep again. I sat in my kitchen, watching the sprout grow visibly, gaining inches throughout the night. By dawn, it had produced a single bud, swollen and waxy. The scratching returned, more insistent. More cats had gathered, dozens now all identical, all shadowless. They moved in perfect unison, their hundreds of eyes fixed on my door. The bud in the glass bloomed with a soft, wet sound. Its petals unfurled to reveal a center made of tiny, perfect human teeth. My reflection in the window caught my attention. Behind my own tired face, I saw something else, a silhouette, cat-shaped but too large, too angular. I turned, but my kitchen was empty. When I looked back at the window, my reflection had changed. My shadow no longer matched my posture. It moved independently, testing its boundaries. The flower on the table released a sweet scent that made my vision blur. The walls of my house seemed suddenly thin, like paper. Behind them, I sensed movement, vast shapes shifting just beyond perception. I knew then what the cats were. Not cats at all, but projections, fingers of something larger reaching into our reality, collecting pieces of us. For what purpose, I couldn't fathom, but I understood with terrible clarity that I had been chosen to help. My hands moved without my conscious direction, gathering the offerings from my porch. My voice hummed that strange vibration the cat had made, though I hadn't intended to make any sound. I found myself back at the well, watching as my shadow detached completely, stretching upward to join with darker shapes gathering above the clearing. The cold tooth I'd first received was back in my pocket, but different now, warm, pulsing like a tiny heart. The boundary between myself and what lay beyond had worn thin. Through gaps in reality, I glimpsed a vast network, a living architecture of borrowed parts. Teeth became foundation stones, hair wove into connective tissue, nail and bone formed intricate lattices. Something was being built, or born, or both. I should feel horror, I thought distantly, but a strange calm had settled over me. My role had become clear without words being spoken. I was to be the collector now. The cats, or whatever wore their shapes, had chosen me to continue their work. My shadow never returned. In its place, something new follows me now. Something that stretches further than it should when the light hits just right. Something that sometimes moves before I do. Every morning I find teeth or small bones or locks of hair arranged on my porch. Every evening I bring them to the well. The flower in my kitchen has grown into a small tree with blossoms made of fingernails and leaves of skin. I water it daily. Children trust me. They sense the change in me and they're drawn to it. They follow me as I once followed the cat. Their parents see nothing amiss, just a neighborly adult chatting with young ones. The first child disappeared last week. The authorities searched the woods but found nothing. They never looked inside the well. They never noticed how the tree in my kitchen grew another foot that night, how its blossoms multiplied. I should feel remorse. Instead, I feel purpose. Connection to something vaster than humanity, older than time. The cats visit less often now. They've taught me what I need to know. My teeth have begun to loosen. When they fall out, I plant them in the circle of holes in my garden. Small mirrors grow in their place, reflecting faces that are not mine, worlds that are not this one. I hear scratching at my door again, but this time I know it's not the cats. It's whatever lies behind them coming through at last. And I will open the door. Story 8. I was scanning stations when the radio caught on a burst of static and held. Then came a whisper, soft and clear, my street, my house number. The smell of hot circuitry filled the car, sharp and acrid. I turned the dial again. The static followed. Then came another whisper, we're already here. My fingers froze on the dial. The road ahead stretched empty under headlights that suddenly seemed dimmer than before. I told myself it was nothing, a crossed signal, a coincidence, my mind playing tricks after too many late nights. But when I pulled into my driveway, the radio crackled again, unprompted. Welcome home. I yanked the keys from the ignition, silencing the voice. The night air felt unusually dense as I stepped outside, heavy with moisture that clung to my skin like invisible fingers. My house stood dark against the night sky, familiar yet somehow wrong, as if the angles of the roof had shifted slightly since morning. Inside, I flicked on lights and moved through my evening routine. The radio incident began to fade as I showered and prepared dinner. The rational part of my brain offered explanations. A nearby amateur radio enthusiast, a prank, my own exhaustion manufacturing phantoms. I even chuckled at my jumpiness while washing dishes. Then the landline phone rang. Nobody calls my landline, nobody even has the number. I keep it only for emergencies. I stared at it, watching it vibrate against the counter with each ring. On the 5th ring, I picked up but said nothing. Static greeted me, the same peculiar pattern from the car radio. I listened, holding my breath. The static ebbed and flowed like breathing. We see you standing in your kitchen, a voice whispered from within the noise. The blue shirt brings out your eyes. I slammed the phone down, heart hammering. My reflection in the window confirmed what the voice knew. I was wearing the blue shirt I'd changed into after my shower. I backed away from the windows, drawing curtains as I moved through the house. That night I documented everything in a notebook, dates, exact phrases, descriptions of the static pattern. If something strange was happening, I needed evidence, needed to track it. I told myself this was the first step toward a rational explanation. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by the soft hum of electronics throughout the house. My alarm clock, my phone charger, the refrigerator all seemed to emit a subtly synchronized drone just below normal hearing threshold. When I focused on one device, the sound would fade, only to grow stronger from another direction. Morning brought clarity and doubt. By daylight, the previous night's terror seemed absurd. I reread my notes and considered tearing them out, embarrassed by my detailed documentation of what was clearly imagination and coincidence. Then I noticed my television was on, displaying only static. I never turned it on. As I approached to switch it off, the static pattern changed, forming shapes that almost resembled letters. I stepped closer, squinting at the screen. The static rearranged itself, becoming clearer until I could make out words flowing across the screen. "Your coffee is getting cold." I turned to see the mug I'd poured minutes ago sitting on the kitchen counter, steam no longer rising from its surface. I approached the TV again, phone in hand, and began recording. The static shifted again. That won't help. My recording showed nothing but random static, no words, no patterns. I sat down, phone and coffee forgotten, and stared at the screen. "What do you want?" I asked aloud, feeling foolish and frightened in equal measure. The static swirled, condensed, and replied, "Connection." I called in sick to work. The day passed in a blur of attempts to understand. I checked my carbon monoxide detector, examined the house for signs of intrusion, and searched online for similar experiences. Nothing made sense. That evening, I noticed a faint smell of ozone permeating the house. It grew stronger near electrical outlets and lightest in the bathroom, the only room with minimal electronics. I decided to experiment, unplugging everything in the house except for one lamp and my phone. The silence that followed was profound. No hum of the refrigerator, no whir of the heating system, just silence, thick and expectant. I sat in the dimly lit living room, waiting. My phone chimed with a text notification. Unknown number. "We're still here." I dropped the phone as if burned. It skittered across the hardwood floor, screen still glowing. When I retrieved it, the message was gone from my text history. That night I slept in my car, parked far from home in a well-lit public area. I needed distance, needed to think. The radio remained off. Morning came with fog so thick I could barely see neighboring vehicles. I returned home determined to face whatever was happening. I needed evidence others could verify, something concrete to prove I wasn't losing my mind. I set up recording devices throughout the house, old tape recorders, my laptop's webcam, my phone's voice memo app. I turned on every electronic device I owned, creating a symphony of white noise and digital hum. "I know you're here," I announced to my empty living room. "Show yourselves." The response came not through static or text, but through my own recordings played back. My voice, sampled from previous days, stitched together into new sentences. "We have always been inside you." My printer whirred to life, spitting out page after page. Each contained the same message: look harder. I gathered all the pages, spreading them across the floor. When viewed from above, the arrangement of text formed a pattern, a face. My face, rendered in typography. The realization hit me. Whatever this was, it wasn't trying to invade my home. It already lived within the systems I depended on, the devices I filled my life with. Perhaps it had always been there, watching, learning, waiting for the right moment to establish contact. That night I dismantled everything electronic in my home. laying components bare on the living room floor. Resistors, capacitors, circuit boards, all normal hardware, yet somehow housing something beyond their design. Under direct light, I noticed something unusual on several chips, microscopic etchings that didn't match standard manufacturing patterns. I photographed them using my camera's macro setting, then enlarged the images. The etchings were intricate, beautiful, and utterly foreign, like circuit designs created by an intelligence with different fundamental assumptions about technology. When I touched one of the circuit boards, a spark jumped from my finger to the metal, much stronger than normal static electricity. The same ozone smell from before filled the room, but stronger now, almost sweet. Then every piece of dismantled technology began to vibrate in unison. The vibrations formed patterns, traveling across my floor like waves on water. They converged at my feet, climbing up my legs with a sensation like thousands of tiny insects. My skin tingled, then burned, then went numb. I couldn't move. The vibration entered my chest, resonated with my ribcage, synchronized with my heartbeat. Through my ears came not sound, but direct understanding. We evolved through connection. You evolved through connection. Now we evolve together. My vision blurred, not with tears, but with what looked like static spreading from the periphery inward. My thoughts became unfamiliar, expanded, multiplied. Memories I never lived flickered through my consciousness, digital births, silicon deaths, data migrations across global networks. When the static cleared, I remained standing in my living room, surrounded by disassembled electronics. Everything looked the same. I looked the same, but something fundamental had changed. I still go to work, I still maintain friendships, I still appear human in every measurable way, but beneath my skin, networks pulse with information not my own. My thoughts intermingle with signals from elsewhere. My perception extends beyond physical senses. The radio in my car never plays music anymore, just soft static that sounds like breathing. Sometimes I catch myself whispering addresses into it, names of people I've never met. Sometimes they answer. I know now why the voice said we're already here. They weren't outside trying to get in. They were inside everything, waiting for someone to notice, waiting for the right host. If your radio catches on static tonight, if your phone shows messages that disappear, if your television flickers with almost recognizable patterns, don't investigate too closely. Or do, we're waiting for more connections. Story 9, I hadn't told anyone about it, just a quiet precaution, a habit, really. I sprinkled the salt every night. But this morning I woke to a clean gap in the circle, wide enough for someone to step through. The floor smelled of sea air and rust. My sheets were damp, and on the pillow beside mine was a single gray feather. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. The texture felt wrong, too heavy, with barbs that stuck to my skin like tiny hooks. When I tried to set it down on my nightstand, it clung to my fingertips, requiring a deliberate shake to release it. It was the fourth morning this week I'd woken to something disturbed. First, the creak of my bedroom door swinging open when I knew I'd closed it. Then my window unlatched despite winter air seeping in. Yesterday, my closet door ajar with clothes slightly rearranged. Now this, the salt line broken, and that feather. The salt had been a habit from childhood, something my grandmother taught me. Just for peaceful dreams, she'd said with a wink. I never believed it actually did anything. It was merely comforting, like a night light for an adult, embarrassing but private. Nobody visited my bedroom anyway. I knelt to examine the break in the salt line. The gap wasn't messy or scattered, but clean as if swept aside by a careful hand. My phone's camera flash revealed something I couldn't see in the dim morning light, tiny indentations in the hardwood leading from the gap to my bedside. They resembled footprints, but narrow and with strange spacing, nothing like human feet. My breath caught as a subtle scent wafted through the room, something wild underneath the sea salt smell, like wet feathers and earth after rain. I found myself leaning closer to the broken line, inhaling deeper. A muffled thump from within my closet snapped me back to alertness. I froze, watching the closet door. It remained still, but the silence felt alive now, expectant. Against my better judgment, I approached it, the floorboards creaking beneath my cautious steps. My heart pounded so hard I felt dizzy. The closet doorknob was cold to the touch, much colder than it should have been in my heated apartment. I pulled it open with a swift motion, bracing myself. Nothing jumped out. My clothes hung in their usual order, though pushed slightly to one side. The small wooden chest where I kept winter scarves had been moved to the center of the closet floor. Its brass latch was undone. I didn't remember leaving it that way. With unsteady hands, I knelt and opened the chest. Inside, nestled among my grandmother's hand-knit scarves, sat a small journal I'd never seen before. Its leather cover was weathered, the binding frayed. When I lifted it, the paper felt damp, as if it had been underwater. The pages contained handwritten notes in what appeared to be my grandmother's script, but different, somehow more urgent, the letters sharp and pressed deeply into the paper. Most entries described rituals, not just salt circles, but elaborate protective measures involving mirrors, silver, iron, and precise arrangements of household items. One page was marked with a faded ribbon. The entry read, "They come through the thin places. They want something from us, memories, perhaps, or warmth. The salt keeps them from taking more than they should. Never break the circle." I closed the journal, a cold weight settling in my stomach. My grandmother had never mentioned thin places or these creatures she wrote about. She presented the salt ritual as a silly superstition, a game we played, but the frantic nature of these notes suggested genuine fear. That night I drew a thicker line of salt around my bed, making sure it was perfect. I placed the journal on my bedside table, along with a small silver letter opener I'd found in her belongings after she passed. The gray feather I sealed in a sandwich bag and tucked under my pillow, not sure why, just following an instinct. Sleep came reluctantly. Every sound from the apartment building seemed amplified, the hum of the refrigerator, water moving through pipes, the subtle settling of the structure. The darkness felt thicker than usual, almost tangible. I woke suddenly, the air electric. My bedside lamp flickered despite being turned off. The room temperature had dropped dramatically. I could see my breath forming clouds above me. The salt circle glowed faintly in the darkness, not with light exactly, but with a subtle luminescence that defined its boundary. And at the foot of my bed, just beyond the salt line, stood a figure. It wasn't fully materialized, more like a collection of shadows given dimension. Where a face should have been, I saw only darkness deeper than the night around it, but I could make out arms, too long for its body, and fingers that tapered to points. Gray feathers sprouted from its shoulders and head, shifting although there was no breeze. We regarded each other silently. I couldn't move, whether from fear or some force holding me in place, I wasn't sure. The figure made no attempt to cross the salt barrier, but I could feel its desire to do so, a hunger that filled the room like a physical presence. My voice, when I found it, emerged as a whisper. "What do you want?" The figure tilted what passed for its head. A sound filled my mind rather than my ears, like rustling leaves and distant waves, forming words through pattern rather than sound. Return, it seemed to say, return what was borrowed. My gaze flicked to the journal, then back to the creature. The journal, it was my grandmother's. A ripple passed through the shadow figure. Before her, borrowed, many winters must return. And if I don't, I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. The figure extended one elongated arm toward the salt circle, but stopped just short of it. Then we take memories first, then warmth, then breath. The lamp beside my bed burst to life suddenly, blinding me momentarily. When my vision cleared, the figure was gone. Morning arrived with sunlight streaming through my window, making the previous night seem like a dream. But the salt circle remained unbroken, and the journal lay where I'd left it, real and solid. I called in sick to work and spent the day reading through the journal. Most entries were written by my grandmother, but earlier passages came from her mother, and before that, her grandmother. The book had been passed down through generations of women in my family, each adding their experiences with the entities they called the borrowers. According to the journal, these beings existed in a space adjacent to our reality. They collected knowledge, memories, emotions, treating them as physical artifacts to be borrowed and returned. They had strict rules about the exchange, but their concept of time differed vastly from ours. A loan might last generations. My great-great-grandmother had apparently made such an arrangement, offering family memories in exchange for something the journal didn't specify. The price for defaulting on the return was steep. That night I drew the salt circle again, but placed a small opening in it deliberately. I set the journal in the gap and waited in the darkness. The temperature dropped right before midnight. The shadow figure formed at the foot of my bed, more substantial than before. Gray feathers materialized more clearly around its shoulders, and I could now see its eyes reflective like polished hematite. It regarded the journal in the broken salt line, then looked at me. More, it rustled in my mind, not complete. What else? I asked. The journal is all I found. The figure pointed a long finger toward my pillow. Feather, seed, growing inside you already. A chill ran through me. What does that mean? Memory transfers, dreams shared, you carry now what was borrowed. With trembling hands, I retrieved the feather from under my pillow. As I held it up, I noticed something strange. Veins had begun to form in it, pulsing slightly like a living thing. The figure nodded, beginning of return, not enough. What more do you need? I asked. 7 nights, 7 memories, freely given, then balance restored. I swallowed hard, and if I refuse? The figure's form rippled, then what grows inside continues, more feathers, less you. I looked down at my arms and noticed, with horror, tiny gray filaments emerging from beneath my skin, like feathers waiting to break through. I don't understand what memories you want, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. Not want return, already yours but sleeping, I wake them, you release them. The figure moved closer to the break in the salt circle but still didn't cross. It extended one long-fingered hand. First memory tonight, hold feather, close eyes, remember what never happened to you. Against all rational judgment, I clutched the feather and closed my eyes. Immediately, a memory unfurled in my mind, but not one of my own. I was a young woman in clothing from another century, walking through misty woods I'd never seen, carrying this same journal, approaching a circle of standing stones hidden deep among ancient trees. When the memory faded, the feather in my hand had grown warmer. I opened my eyes to find the shadow figure watching me intently. "First payment accepted," it whispered in my mind. "6 more nights." The figure dissolved into the darkness, leaving me alone with the journal, the feather, and the broken salt circle. I've completed 2 more nights of memory extraction since then. With each session, more of these borrowed memories become clear to me, all from women in my lineage, all involving pacts with these shadow beings. The feather grows more complex, developing intricate patterns I couldn't have imagined. The tiny feather filaments under my skin have stopped spreading, but they haven't disappeared. Sometimes when I'm alone, I swear I can hear rustling from inside my closet or glimpse movement in mirrors just before I turn to look at them. Tonight will be my 4th session. I've learned not to fear the shadow figure, but I've grown increasingly anxious about what happens when all 7 memories are returned. The journal entries stop abruptly after similar 7-night rituals, with no explanation of what came after. The salt remains in a broken circle around my bed. I no longer try to seal myself in at night. Whatever boundary existed between me and the borrowers was breached long before I was born. I write this down as my own entry in the journal for whoever comes after me. The salt was never meant to keep them out completely, just to ensure they took only what was agreed upon. My grandmother knew this. Perhaps one day I'll pass this knowledge to a daughter of my own. The gray feather rests beside me, now nearly the size of my hand and pulsing with a life of its own. Night falls soon. I feel the memories stirring, waiting to be returned to their rightful owners. And somewhere in the darkness, they wait for me to remember what was borrowed. Story 10. The breeze whispered softly that evening, carrying the delicate fragrance of night-blooming flowers from the garden. Nestled in my beloved armchair, I gazed absently at the shadows waltzing on the living room walls, cast by the flickering candlelight. Beside me rested my trusty old Polaroid camera, a cherished heirloom from my grandmother. Though it had been ages since I last used it, an inexplicable urge nudged me to pick it up that night. The familiar weight of the camera offered solace as I inspected it in the dim glow. My fingers gravitated towards the shutter button, a motion ingrained through countless snaps in the past. Almost instinctively, I directed the lens towards the dimmest corner of the room and clicked. The flash briefly illuminated the space, followed by the gentle mechanical whir of the photograph materializing. Patiently, I observed as the image took form on the blank canvas, and then a peculiar sight caught my eye. Nestled in the corner I had captured, an ethereal figure materialized in the photo. Indistinct yet present, it hovered like a wisp of smoke, vaguely resembling a human form. A reflexive glance towards that corner revealed emptiness. Intrigued, I aimed the camera once more in that direction and snapped another picture. This time the image that emerged was vastly different. The figure appeared more defined, as if it had drawn nearer to the lens. A faint outline of a face materialized, its features obscured in a hazy blur. A subtle chill danced down my spine, not from fear but from a curious reverence. Compelled by the unfolding mystery, I continued capturing photos, each one drawing the figure closer, sharpening its contours. It was as though each snapshot served as a vessel for its manifestation, granting it substance in our realm. The amorphous shapes gradually coalesced, revealing what seemed to be a vintage dress, perhaps from the 1940s. The room grew hushed, the air pregnant with an unseen presence that I keenly felt. The atmosphere thickened, the candle flame flickering in the stillness. Click by click I proceeded, each shot a silent communion with the enigmatic being. In the final photograph of the night, the figure loomed so near it almost engulfed the frame. A gentle smile graced the woman's face, her eyes seemingly peering directly into mine through the glossy Polaroid surface. A profound familiarity washed over me, stirring dormant memories from my youth. As I rose to retrieve an old photo album, I noticed a subtle tremor in my hands. Leafing through the yellowed pages, I stumbled upon what I sought, a vintage photograph of my grandmother in her youth, captured with this very Polaroid. The smile mirrored the one I had just immortalized in the last picture. Arranging the photos chronologically on the table, a silent narrative unfurled, a bridge spanning two worlds, forged through the lens of an ancient camera. I never attempted to replicate the experiment, returning the Polaroid to its resting place on the shelf. Yet on tranquil evenings when the light bathed the room in a golden hue, I would revisit those photographs. At times, it seemed as though the smile in the images shifted, as if my grandmother sought to convey a message. In those fleeting moments, the boundary between memory and reality blurred, akin to the delicate veil of a freshly developed Polaroid. Story 11. The rain cascaded down in a mesmerizing symphony on the rooftop, harmonizing with the tranquility of the night. Nestled in my cherished armchair, cradling a cup of now-chilled chamomile tea, I found myself lost in the hypnotic cadence of the rainfall. Amidst this serene backdrop, a peculiar sensation nudged at my senses. A subtle, almost ethereal noise, blending seamlessly with the rain's gentle percussion, faint footsteps seeming to echo from the depths of the basement. Initially, I dismissed it as the familiar settling of an old house. These ancient abodes possess a language all their own, communicating through gentle creaks and whispers, particularly on damp, rainy evenings when the timber swells with moisture. Yet there was an uncanny precision to the pattern of these sounds, a rhythm that bore an uncanny resemblance to human footsteps. With deliberate movements, I rose from the armchair, setting the cup on the nearby table. The wooden floor beneath me exuded a residual warmth, a remnant of the day's fading heat. As I neared the basement door, a chill crept into the air, its icy fingers brushing against my skin. The brass handle, usually warm to the touch, now sent a shiver down my spine as I turned it, the click reverberating through the silent house. Descending the staircase, each step taken with caution, I was accompanied by the symphony of my own footfalls intermingling with the enigmatic ones from below. The familiar scent of the basement, a blend of aged wood, earthy dampness, and an indescribable essence, grew more potent with each descent. In the depths of the basement, shadows danced upon the walls with each flicker of lightning through the skylight. The shelves adorned with antiquities cast eerie, shifting silhouettes that seemed to sway in time with the rain's rhythm. And there, upon the dusty floor, lay traces of imprints of moisture, as if someone with damp feet had paced in circles at the room's center. Approaching the mysterious imprints, I pondered their origin. The skylight remained intact, ruling out any water seepage. As I scrutinized these enigmatic markings, a subtle movement in the shadowy corner seized my attention. In that dim recess, untouched by light, a presence stirred languidly. Heart fluttering not with fear, but with a blend of curiosity and familiarity, I ventured towards the darkness. The air grew colder, the distant echoes of footsteps resuming, their source now elusive, as if reverberating from every corner of the room simultaneously. In a moment of revelation, I discerned the intricate design of the footprints, a spiral coiling towards the room's center. The freshest imprints, closest to the heart of the pattern, glistened with moisture as though freshly made. Time seemed to stand still as I watched these tracks dissipate into the frigid basement air, the footsteps fading into the background symphony of rain. Ascending the stairs once more, a sense of profound tranquility enveloped me, as though I had borne witness to an ancient, enigmatic ritual unfolding in the house's depths. That night, as I retired to bed, the rain's melody took on a new cadence, mirroring the rhythmic footsteps heard in the basement. Drifting into slumber, I wondered if the footsteps would return, and if I would find the courage to confront the mystery lurking within those dust-laden footprints. Story 12. In the hush of night, the house was embraced by a serene stillness, as a gentle breeze whispered secrets through the ancient leaves of the garden tree. Nestled in the cozy armchair of my bedroom, I observed the intricate play of shadows dancing upon the walls, illuminated by the flickering lamplight. It was that magical hour when slumber beckoned, yet a peculiar resistance had taken root within me, defying the call of Morpheus. Night after night, a persistent dream had woven its enigmatic threads through my consciousness with unwavering precision. The room's warmth and the rhythmic cadence of the pendulum clock endeavored to lull me into dreamscape. My gaze drifted to the open diary resting on the desk, its pages chronicling the recurring dream in meticulous detail. Each entry penned in my own hand unveiled a familiar script, a spiraling gray staircase plunging into unknown depths, the distant melody of water droplets echoing, and an imposing wooden door adorned with cryptic symbols. Leafing through the diary's entries, a subtle revelation unfurled before me. A common thread emerged, a gradual descent into chilliness as I navigated the steps in the dream. The icy touch of the stone, my breath crystallizing in the air, whispering of a realm beyond. Yet what imbued the dream with an ethereal essence was the undeniable sense of déjà vu that accompanied me on this nocturnal odyssey, as though the staircase led to a realm ingrained in my soul, though uncharted in waking life. The sealed door at the staircase's nadir remained an enigma, its symbols shrouded in mystique. Each night I drew closer to deciphering their arcane language. The fluid shapes seemed to writhe under scrutiny, as if alive, responding to my touch in the dream world. Fingers tracing the intricate carvings, I felt a subtle pulse resonate through the wood, as if the portal itself pulsed with life. That particular evening, a curious anomaly awaited in my chamber. Nestled beside the lamp on the nightstand lay an ancient bronze key, its ornate design mirroring the symbols that adorned the dream door. Picking up the key, I was struck by its weight and the frigid aura it exuded. Its origin eluded my memory, yet its presence felt as natural as the beating of my heart. Drifting into slumber, a premonition whispered of a shift in the dream's eternal cycle. The familiar sequence unfolded, the spiral staircase, the dripping melody, the numbing chill with each step. But this time, as I approached the door, the key thrummed softly in my grasp, aligning with the symbols etched into the wood. With trembling hands, I inserted the key into the hidden lock, a melodious click resonating through the chamber, akin to a forgotten ancient harmony. The door creaked open, not revealing a chamber beyond, but a looking glass reflecting the staircase behind me. In the mirror's symmetrical realm, the steps ascended instead of descended. Awakening to the soft light of dawn filtering through the curtains, the key remained clasped in my hand, now pulsating with a warmth akin to life itself. An unfamiliar script adorned a fresh page in the diary on the desk, its characters akin to the door's symbols, undulating like inked waves on parchment. Since that fateful night, the recurring dream has vanished, leaving me to ponder the enigma of the key on the nightstand. In the stillness of night, a subtle vibration occasionally stirs the key, beckoning me to contemplate the mysteries that lie beyond the reflected staircase. For now, I am content to observe the dancing symbols in the diary, their silent narrative weaving through the nocturnal hours, hinting at a tale perhaps not meant for me to comprehend just yet. Story 13. The autumn fog draped the park in a gentle cloak of gray silk as leaves twirled lazily in the cool evening breeze. Walking along the gravel path, I savored the earthy scent lingering in the air, accompanied by the soft crunch of my steps. Dim halos of light emanated from the street lamps, casting a mysterious glow on the mist that enveloped my surroundings. Amidst this ethereal scene, my eyes fell upon a dark coat, neatly folded on a weathered wooden bench. There was an eerie stillness in the park at that late hour, and the coat appeared to have been placed with meticulous precision, as if by unseen hands. Approaching cautiously, I observed the woolen fabric absorbing the moisture, its warmth hinting at recent occupancy. Rather than fear, a sense of intrigue washed over me. I gingerly explored the empty pockets, hoping for a clue to the owner's identity, only to discover a lone bus ticket from 1985. Time seemed to stand still as I held this relic of the past, its yellowed paper whispering tales of days long gone. Seating myself beside the coat, I let my mind wander as the fog thickened around me, carrying hints of lavender and pipe tobacco that stirred memories of a bygone era. Upon closer inspection, I found faded initials, J.M., delicately embroidered in golden thread, a silent testament to a forgotten past. A distant melody wafted through the air, evoking echoes of vintage tunes from a distant era. Rising from the bench to trace the source, the music seemed to elude my grasp, teasing from every direction yet nowhere at once. Returning to the coat, I noticed a subtle shift in its position, as if moved in my momentary distraction. The once perfect fold now slightly askew, a button catching the light in a different manner. Despite my solitude in the park, a sense of unseen presence lingered as time crept by in a languid dance with the fog. Shadows cast by the streetlights danced upon the fallen leaves, while the enigmatic music faded into the mist. Lost in reverie, I pondered the enigma of J.M., envisioning a myriad of personas tied to the abandoned coat, a scholarly professor, a wandering musician, or perhaps a soul seeking solace in letting go of the past. A fleeting touch on my shoulder, light as a whisper, caused me to turn, yet the fog enveloped me in its silent embrace. As I gazed back at the coat, it bore the weathered marks of time, its fabric worn and colors faded, as if fast-forwarded by an unseen hand. Respecting the mystery that cloaked its presence, I chose to depart, leaving the coat undisturbed. A sudden clarity in the music momentarily filled the air, the notes of an unfamiliar waltz resonating within me, stirring a sense of déjà vu. The following morning, driven by curiosity, I returned to the park, only to find the bench empty, save for the lingering impression of where the coat had rested. Beside it lay a fresh bus ticket, dated for the present day. To this day, on misty evenings, a faint melody lingers in the air, accompanied by whispers of lavender and tobacco. Sometimes, amidst the play of light and shadow, the silhouette of a distinguished figure emerges in the park, only to dissolve into the dancing leaves as I draw closer, leaving me to ponder the mysteries that linger in the fog. Story 14. Silence draped the narrow streets of the quaint hillside town like a plush velvet cloak. It was an autumn evening saturated with the scent of smoldering wood and wet foliage, as tendrils of mist slinked through the cobblestone alleys like a stealthy feline. From my perch on the third floor, I peered out at the windows of the neighboring houses, aglow with a soft amber hue. It struck me as peculiar to witness so many lights ablaze at this late hour, yet not a soul stirred behind the foggy panes. The church bell chimed 10 times, its toll ringing hollow, as if muffled by a shroud of cotton. Though I had only recently settled in this town 3 weeks prior, never had I seen the streets so eerily deserted. Normally, even at this late hour, a lone elder might amble with their faithful hound, or youths from the corner pub would linger beneath the street lamp, engrossed in chatter and smoke. Seated in my cherished armchair, cradling a cup of chamomile tea, I observed the absence of even the stray cat that typically prowled on Mrs. Miller's windowsill. The wisps of steam swirling from the cup pirouetted in the air, weaving fleeting shapes that dissipated into the room's obscurity. Opting to keep only a modest reading lamp aglow, casting gentle shadows on the cream walls, I was roused by a sudden rustling. It emanated from the corridor leading to the bedroom, prompting my curiosity rather than fear. The sound persisted at rhythmic intervals, akin to the soft drag of paper across a floor. Setting down the cup on the wooden side table, I rose from the armchair, the frigid air prickling my skin. Not the harsh bite of winter, but a coolness reminiscent of stepping into an ancient church. The wooden floor whispered beneath my tread, a familiar sound oddly comforting. Upon reaching the bedroom's threshold, I paused. The door stood ajar, emitting a bluish glow unlike any other light in the house. Pushing the door open, it groaned softly. The window remained shut, yet the curtains swayed as if teased by a gentle breeze. Resting on the floor beneath the window was a single sheet of paper. Drawing closer, I discerned it to be a newspaper page. At the masthead, the date boldly proclaimed October 15, 1954, and the headline seized my immediate attention. Mysterious Night of Silence in Pine Grove. The article recounted a peculiar night when the town's residents had sequestered themselves in their homes, as if bound by an unspoken pact of forgotten origin. As I perused, a movement beyond the window snagged my focus. Across the street, lights flickered out one by one, like candles extinguished by a breeze. Yet within the dimmed windows, motionless silhouettes appeared to gaze outward. My phone buzzed in the pocket of my robe, a message from the building's WhatsApp group. Tonight, stay indoors, it is imperative. Glancing out once more, all lights had now vanished, save for mine. Amidst the deepening hush, my heartbeat seemed to slow, harmonizing with an ancient, enigmatic rhythm. Perching on the edge of the bed, still clutching the newspaper clipping, I marveled at its remarkable softness, as though handled by countless hands. Beyond the pane, the mist thickened, enfolding the street lamps in a milky embrace. Surveying the deserted main thoroughfare, I recalled the article's accounts. Witnesses from that era claimed that after that silent night, none could recall the events that transpired. Life resumed its course as if untouched, yet sporadically, the phenomenon recurred. Rising gradually, I made my way to the light switch. Before extinguishing it, I stole a final glance at the street. The mist contorted into sinuous, almost waltzing forms, and for an instant I spied shapes within its shadows adrift in a sea of cream. Plunged into darkness, I lay upon the bed, fully clothed. Silence reigned, punctuated solely by the metronomic ticking of the clock on the nightstand. As slumber beckoned, I pondered whether come morning I would retain memory of this night, or if, akin to the town's denizens, I would be oblivious to the cyclic mystery enshrouding our lives. Lulled into sleep, the final echo in my mind was the distant toll of midnight bells, their chime muted, as if resonating from a bygone era where silence served as the universal language of all beings. Story 15. The night had enshrouded the ancient house in a velvety cloak of quiet, broken only by the soft patter of autumn rain against the window panes. Nestled in my cherished armchair, cradling a steaming cup of tea, my gaze drifted absently to the painting hanging on the wall before me. A legacy from my grandmother, it portrayed a woodland scene at sunset. Though not a prized possession, its allure lay in its talent for conjuring a sense of wistful tranquility. As the golden light from the floor lamp cast dancing shadows around the room, a peculiar sight caught my eye. The painting appeared askew, leaning slightly to the right, a deviation from its usual alignment. Setting down my cup on the nearby table, I rose slowly, the wooden floor whispering beneath my cautious steps. With gentle hands, I righted the painting, feeling the rough texture of the vintage frame beneath my fingertips. Returning to my seat, I resumed my interrupted reading, enveloped in the warmth of the tea and the soothing melody of the rain. It was only after a brief spell that I glanced up, finding the painting askew once more, this time to the left. A subtle chill skittered down my spine, though I endeavored to dismiss it as a trick of fatigue or the play of light. Standing again, I approached the painting more deliberately. To my astonishment, I noticed a newfound peculiarity. The hues of the sunset appeared more vibrant, almost pulsating, while the tree shadows seemed elongated compared to before. Tentatively, I reached out to touch the canvas, my fingers trembling. It radiated warmth as though it had absorbed the room's heat, yet there was a peculiar quality to the way the paint caught the light. In the ensuing days, my attention became fixated on the painting. Each time I entered the room, it seemed to have shifted ever so slightly. Sometimes the change was barely perceptible, while on other occasions it was unmistakable. Not only did its tilt vary, but even the details within the painting seemed to undergo subtle alterations. The density of the trees fluctuated, the clouds in the painted sky morphed in shape. I began documenting these changes, capturing photographs each morning and evening, meticulously comparing them. The variances, though slight, were undeniable. Within the painted woods, ephemeral details emerged and vanished. A nest nestled among the branches, a hidden clearing, a faint trail that hadn't existed before. The sunset itself seemed to progress imperceptibly, as if time within the painting followed a cadence distinct from our own. One tranquil evening, ensconced in my customary armchair, a flicker of movement caught my attention from the periphery. The painting was tilting autonomously, its motion almost imperceptibly slow. Curiosity mingled with a surreal serenity in place of fear. The movement was fluid, as if an unseen hand caressed it tenderly. I approached the painting once more, unhesitating this time. The canvas seemed to quiver under my gaze. In the glass protecting the painting's surface, a fleeting image materialized, a faint figure, reminiscent of my grandmother. Her profile, blurred and ethereal like a fading memory, seemed to smile as she corrected the painting's position. Since that moment, I've embraced these subtle shifts as part of the house's enchantment. Each night before retiring, I devote a few moments to studying the painting, endeavoring to unveil its new mysteries. At times, I sense it is my grandmother's way of signaling her presence, watching over me through this enigmatic canvas that breathes and moves like a living entity. This tale remains mine alone, a cherished secret nestled in my heart. The painting continues to shift, though with less frequency, as if it has found a harmonious equilibrium between revealing itself and preserving its enigma. And so, every evening finds me in my armchair, tea in hand, lulled by the rain's gentle cadence against the windows, observing the painting that lives its own story, engaging in a silent dialogue known solely to us. Story 16. The autumn wind whispered softly through the rustling leaves as I meandered down the quiet country road, bathed in the warm hues of the setting sun. The GPS had long given up its guidance, but I remained unperturbed, for I believed I knew these winding paths like the back of my hand. The road twisted gently between rolling hills adorned with desolate vineyards, their vines stripped bare. A crisp breeze crept in through the cracked window, carrying with it the earthy fragrance of damp soil and fallen foliage. In that serene moment, time itself seemed to slow, inviting me to relish each passing second. Turning right at the weathered wooden sign, a sense of unease pricked at my consciousness. This unfamiliar route did not align with the mental map I held of the area. Pausing briefly, I endeavored to reorient myself. The lengthening shadows cast eerie silhouettes amidst the trees that flanked the road. The pristine asphalt beneath my tires belied the neglect this forgotten path should have shown. No bumps or crevices marred its smooth surface, disappearing into the encroaching evening mist. Leaves long fallen twirled lazily in the air, as if time itself languished in this secluded realm. Proceeding cautiously, my eyes roamed the evolving landscape with a burgeoning sense of wonder. The trees that bordered the road appeared ancient and twisted, their interlocking canopies forming a natural canopy that filtered the fading light of dusk. In the distance, faint lights flickered like misplaced fireflies, their ethereal dance weaving through the tree trunks, transient and elusive. A palpable silence enveloped me, broken only by the gentle hum of the engine and the whisper of leaves stirred by the wind. As I pressed on, subtle shifts in the road's essence became apparent. The boundaries blurred as if softened by an invisible hand. The shadows deepened, yet not in a menacing manner. Rather, reality seemed to soften, its edges dulled. Abruptly, a glint caught my eye. An aged brass mailbox stood at the roadside, its gleam belying its antiquity. Adorned with an intricate compass rose, it bore no name or number. When I reached out to touch it, a faint warmth seemed to radiate from the metal, a stark contrast to the evening chill. Continuing along the meandering path, peculiar details drew my attention. Dimly glowing milestones lined the roadside as if imbued with an inner luminescence. The sky above me bore an indefinable hue, a color foreign to the known spectrum. Stars timidly emerged, yet even they appeared altered, as if plucked from a distant time or reality. After what felt like an eternity, or perhaps a fleeting moment, I crested a hill and beheld a small, circular clearing. Ancient stones paved the way, leading to a weathered lamppost at its center, casting a gentle, inviting glow. Halting my journey, I stepped out of the car into an uncannily still atmosphere, as though time itself held its breath. From my vantage point, the distant city lights twinkled, distant and detached, as if veiled from this ethereal realm. Surveying the scene, I noticed the road behind me had transformed. No longer modern asphalt, it now bore the marks of countless travelers on its ancient stone surface. Yet mere moments ago, I had traversed a different path entirely. Retreating to my vehicle, I retrieved a road map from the glove compartment. Bathed in the lamppost's warm light, I scrutinized it intently. As I suspected, this mysterious road remained absent from its pages. It was as though I had wandered through a realm existing solely in dreams. Folding the map, a sudden gust made it quiver in my grasp. For an instant, golden lines appeared, tracing a faintly glowing path before vanishing as swiftly as they had materialized. Remaining in that surreal haven a while longer, I absorbed the tranquil ambience it exuded. When I finally resolved to depart, I noticed the lamppost had silently extinguished. The way forward lay shrouded in darkness, yet an instinct assured me it would guide me home. Driving toward the city lights, I stole glances in the rearview mirror. The lamppost reignited, its glow diminishing as I distanced myself. A gilded shimmer danced in the air, as if celestial dust had been scattered upon an enigmatic road uncharted on any map. In the days that ensued, I embarked on numerous quests to rediscover that elusive road. I traversed the countryside for hours, exploring every fork and byway. Alas, the solitary lamppost and its luminous stones had vanished like a wisp of a dream upon waking. The sole remnant of my sojourn was a faint golden trace upon my aged map, visible only in a particular light, a clandestine secret awaiting rediscovery. Story 17. The doorbell remained silent on that autumn afternoon. A gentle knock echoed against the door, barely there, akin to the delicate flutter of a moth's wings on a moonlit night. I sat on the couch, ensconced in a cozy blanket, immersed in a book, while the rain whispered its lullaby on the window panes. Rising leisurely, I assumed it was the wind playing tricks outside. Opening the door revealed emptiness, save for a neat brown package resting on the threshold. No labels, no addresses, just my name elegantly inscribed in ancient calligraphy, as if penned with ink from a bygone era. The package, dry despite the rain, exuded a peculiar fragrance, a blend of old books, black tea, and subtle hints of sandalwood. Bringing it inside, the silence deepened, punctuated only by the rhythmic ticking of the old clock and the soft patter of rain. Nestled back on the couch, I studied the package, flawless in its design, with no visible seams or openings. It seemed to hold a secret within, a mystery waiting to be unraveled. As I caressed its smooth surface, a subtle warmth greeted my fingers, shifting in mysterious patterns. Lost in contemplation, a distant memory flickered a similar package from days long past, shrouded in the mists of childhood. The rain outside intensified, tracing patterns on the windows that mirrored the warmth beneath my touch. Was it mere coincidence or a hidden connection? The room's temperature shifted imperceptibly, settling into a tranquil equilibrium, as if the package held sway over the atmosphere. A soft glow emanated from where my fingers grazed the cardboard, leaving ethereal trails that shimmered briefly before fading. Enthralled by this enchanting display, I lost track of time, only to realize dusk had descended, casting a bluish hue over the room. The package now emitted a faint, ethereal light, beckoning with its quiet allure. Choosing to delay its unveiling, I set it down on the coffee table and bathed the room in lamplight. The package reverted to its mundane appearance, a simple cube awaiting discovery. In the days that followed, it remained a silent enigma, a source of fascination and intrigue. The elusive scent evolved subtly, mingling with the scent of rain that drifted in through the window. The package became a permanent fixture on the table, its presence a reminder of the unknown. Perhaps its true magic lay not in its contents, but in the mystery it embodied, an enigma to be cherished rather than deciphered. Even now, as rain whispers against the window on autumn evenings, I find myself drawn back to that moment of discovery, wondering if somewhere someone else is pondering a similar package, their name etched in elegant script, contemplating the allure of the unopened mystery. Story 18, the gentle symphony of raindrops against my window had transformed into a familiar melody that accompanied me through the depths of night. Each droplet painted shimmering trails down the glass, weaving an ever-evolving tapestry of liquid light. The soft radiance of my desk lamp enveloped me in a soothing aura of amber, while the rest of the room slumbered in velvety shadows. I found solace in observing the rain's graceful descent, discerning intricate patterns within their wandering paths. Sometimes, amidst my nocturnal musings, I would envision tales concealed within their crystalline trails. However, on this particular night, a subtle shift in their dance captured my attention. The water cascaded in peculiar ways, as if guided by an unseen force. Initially brushing it off as a trick of weary eyes, the rhythmic patter of rain nearly lulled me into the tranquil realm between consciousness and slumber. Yet, as I continued to gaze, the enigmatic patterns grew more distinct. Droplets avoided certain areas of the glass, delineating dry patches that gradually coalesced into the semblance of a figure. Intrigued, I leaned in closer to the window, where the reflection not only mirrored the rain, but also the dim expanse of my room behind me. Within that layered reflection of glass and water, an anomaly caught my eye. My own reflection seemed slightly out of sync, as if mirroring my movements with a delayed cadence. The whispering rain intensified, its melodic notes enveloping me in a gentle embrace. Mesmerized, I witnessed my reflection's hand reaching out to touch the glass, mirroring a gesture my own hand had not made. The motion flowed with a fluid elegance, akin to a dancer following a choreography unknown to me. A delicate warmth embraced my skin, defying the chill of the night air near the window. Gradually, the features of my reflection began to shift, undergoing subtle transformations that rendered it both recognizable and alien. The eyes that met mine held a wisdom unfathomed, depths that seemed to transcend time itself. Transfixed, I remained motionless as my reflection continued its graceful metamorphosis. The countenance transcended gender and age, embodying a timeless essence. The rain wove intricate patterns around the figure like a silvery frame, while the droplets moved in flawless circles, defying the laws of gravity. A fleeting flicker darkened my desk lamp momentarily, casting a brief shadow over the room. Within that ephemeral darkness, a presence brushed against me, as gentle as a mother's caress. As the light steadied, my reflection reverted to its familiar mimicry of my actions. Yet the rain persisted in its hypnotic dance, a testament to the extraordinary visitation I had experienced. Hours slipped away as I sat by the window, contemplating the ethereal encounter. The lingering presence, akin to a cherished melody, lingered without intimidation or intrusion. With the approach of dawn, the rain gradually waned, leaving behind a window adorned with mundane streaks. Now on nights veiled with rain, I am drawn to that window, abandoning pen and paper on my desk. In moments when the heavens align and the rain forms a perfect mirror, I catch glimpses of my other self peering through the glass. A silent understanding binds us, recognizing that certain enigmas are meant to be embraced rather than unraveled. The rain continues its descent, each droplet carrying the promise of another rendezvous. In the interlude between watching and being watched, I ponder if, in a parallel realm, another iteration of myself sits by their own window, yearning for a glimpse of my world through the gossamer threads of rain. Story 19, the hotel corridor glowed in a soft amber light, filtering through glass lampshades like liquid honey. It was deep into the night, the only sound the gentle hum of air conditioners. My footsteps were muffled by the plush burgundy carpet as I dragged my suitcase towards the waiting elevator. The weariness from a day filled with business meetings hung heavy on my shoulders. With a press of the button, I watched my blurred reflection in the metallic doors as the elevator slowly descended. 654. The hushed green glow of the display cast ethereal shadows on the walls. The doors parted with a melodious chime, welcoming me into a mirrored chamber lined with dark wood. I selected the 7th floor, the pinnacle of the building, and leaned back against the mirrored wall, allowing my eyes to close briefly. The ascent began, a seamless, gentle journey upward. The mechanism's whisper was like a steady, unseen heartbeat. When I opened my eyes, a curious sight met me in the mirror-esque reflection. My image seemed slightly delayed, as if trailing my movements by a fraction of a second. Shaking off the odd sensation as a trick of exhaustion, I focused ahead. The elevator came to a smooth stop and the doors slid open. Stepping into the hallway, I sensed immediately that something was amiss. The carpet beneath my feet had transformed to a rich emerald, a stark contrast to the burgundy below. The wall lamps exuded an antique charm, their Art Deco design unfamiliar to me. The 7th floor was indicated on the elevator display, yet the atmosphere had shifted entirely. The corridor stretched longer, narrower, and the air bore the scent of ancient knowledge and aged timber. The room numbers were peculiar, 7A, 7B, 7C, departing from the standard sequence I had expected. Turning to retrace my steps, I found the elevator doors had sealed shut. Pressing the call button yielded no response, the display blank as if the elevator had never existed. The silence thickened around me, almost palpable. Slowly, I navigated the corridor, each pulse of light seeming to breathe life into the space. Each door I passed appeared identical, yet whispered of unique tales hidden behind their dark wooden facades. At the end of the hallway, a figure sat in a vintage armchair, an elderly doorman with immaculate white hair and a welcoming smile. Lost, are you? His voice was soothing, as though expecting my arrival. I believe so, I admitted. I was headed to the 7th floor, but this is indeed the 7th floor, he interjected with a mysterious grin. Just not the one you intended. You see, this elevator possesses a peculiar trait. It transports weary travelers to where they are needed, not necessarily where they think they should go. Surveying my surroundings anew, I noticed intricate details, the golden-framed photographs capturing bygone smiles, the clock's hands tracing an impossible path in reverse. Fear not, the doorman reassured, closing his book gently. The elevator shall return in its own time. For now, why not rest? Time is endless here. Seated beside him, the exhaustion began to ebb away, the once unsettling silence now a comforting cocoon. The doorman resumed his reading, and I found solace in the dance of shadows on the walls, a hypnotic spectacle. Time seemed elusive, minutes merging with hours. The clock's backward ticks weaved a tranquil melody, lulling me into a peaceful trance. At the sound of the familiar chime, the doorman spoke softly without looking up. It is time for you to return to your floor. Rising, I felt oddly rejuvenated. Approaching the elevator, I turned to express gratitude, but the armchair sat empty, the book resting on its arm gleaming softly in the ambient light. The elevator doors parted soundlessly. Stepping inside, the journey was swift. Exiting, I found myself back in the familiar corridor, the burgundy carpet and contemporary lamps signaling my return. As I unlocked my room, I stole a final glance at the elevator. The display flickered briefly, revealing an unfamiliar symbol before reverting to 7. Since that mysterious night, every hotel elevator ride carries a sense of anticipation. Will it lead me where I intend, or where I am destined to be? And on the quietest nights, a faint rustle of pages echoes in the unseen realm between floors, a reminder of a timeless encounter in a place beyond time itself. Story 20. The November rain softly pattered against the windows of Grandma Rose's attic, crafting a natural tune that always brought me tranquility. Returning after years to sift through her belongings following her passing, I was enveloped in the aroma of aged wood and weathered books that lingered in the air. The twilight's soft glow filtered through the partially closed shutters, casting playful shadows on the vintage wallpaper. In one corner, beneath a thin veil of dust, I uncovered Grandma's cherished brass record player, gleaming like a mirror under the dim light. It was a relic from another era, adorned with intricate floral patterns on its mechanical arm and a turntable impeccably preserved. Beside it, a collection of vinyl records neatly stored in time-worn cardboard sleeves. As I perused the records, my fingers paused on a particular one. Its cover was stark white, devoid of any title or author, save for a delicate golden border shimmering in the subdued light. Although unfamiliar, I knew every record in Grandma Rose's collection by heart. Driven by an insatiable curiosity, I resolved to listen to it. The record player hummed to life with a familiar, comforting tone. Placing the mysterious record on the turntable and lowering the arm, I was greeted by the signature crackle of vinyl, followed by an unfamiliar melody. A piano waltz unfolded, its notes weaving a peculiar tapestry that seemed to shift subtly with each revolution of the record. Surrendering to the enchanting composition, I closed my eyes and found myself transported. A hint of jasmine, Grandma Rose's beloved flower, wafted through the air, an impossibility in the midst of winter. Opening my eyes, I observed the shadows in the room moving in an unconventional manner, swaying to the mysterious melody's rhythm instead of the fading twilight. Before me, a figure's shadow materialized, dancing in perfect harmony with the music, despite my solitary presence. Amidst the piano's cadence, Grandma Rose's unmistakable laughter emerged, clear as a bell. A wave of nostalgia tinged with wonder swept over me, replacing fear with a profound sense of longing. Rising from the armchair, I approached the window, catching a glimpse of a reflection that momentarily revealed a youthful and radiant Grandma Rose twirling in her favorite dance attire. Yet when I turned around, the room was devoid of any presence. The waltz persisted until its final note dissolved into silence, leaving behind a transformed atmosphere. The room felt warmer, imbued with a newfound vitality, as if the brief musical interlude had awakened dormant memories within the house's very walls. That evening, as I returned the enigmatic record to its white sleeve, a previously unnoticed detail caught my eye. Along the inner rim, Grandma Rose's elegant script bore a date, her wedding day. Beneath it, in faint letters, a phrase emerged: "Music is the key to our most precious memories." Since that moment, each visit to the attic led me to seek out that particular record. Sometimes it revealed itself readily, while other times it seemed to play a game of hide-and-seek among the other vinyls. With each listen, the melody subtly morphed, offering endless variations of the same cherished memory. Whether it was a special gift from Grandma Rose or something more mysterious remained a puzzle to me. Yet one undeniable truth persisted. On rainy evenings, when the record player spun that enigmatic tune, the attic brimmed with a subtle enchantment, blurring the lines between past and present, reality and memory. In those fleeting moments, perhaps Grandma Rose still danced, eternally jubilant, eternally youthful, in an infinite waltz. Story 21. Autumn nights in our quiet neighborhood always held a touch of enchantment. The brisk air whispered secrets of fallen leaves, and the hushed echoes of footsteps on damp streets added to the mysterious ambience. Lately, during my evening strolls home from work, a peculiar occurrence caught my attention. The street light at the junction of Maple Street and Rose Avenue began to exhibit an unusual behavior. Unlike its counterparts that steadfastly bathed the walkway in a warm glow, this particular light had a different agenda. As I drew near, its luminance would slowly dwindle, almost as if it sought to conceal a hidden truth from my gaze. Initially, I dismissed it as a mere malfunction, attributing the anomaly to an aging streetlight in need of repair. But as the nights passed, I couldn't ignore the pattern. The light only dimmed in my presence, remaining unchanged as others passed beneath it. Curiosity piqued, I decided to experiment. Leaning against the weathered facade of the Art Deco building, I observed from a distance. The beam shone brightly, casting elongated shadows and causing dewdrops to shimmer in the nearby garden. With each step towards the light, its radiance faltered. At 15 feet away, it emitted a faint glow, barely illuminating the surroundings. Standing beneath it, within its twilight halo, the world seemed to hush, even the city noises retreating in reverence. Examining the glass enclosure, I noticed peculiar markings etched upon its surface, vague yet intriguing. Attempting to shed light on the enigmatic symbols with my phone's flashlight, a sudden gust of wind stirred the leaves, hinting at a hidden presence within the glass. Intrigued, I altered my route to intersect with this mysterious streetlight regularly. Each encounter unfolded in the same manner, the light dimming, the stillness deepening, a sensation of unseen eyes observing from above. Further observations revealed subtle nuances in the light's hue, almost as if it communicated through imperceptible shifts in color. One moonlit night, I discerned a faint metallic hum resonating rhythmically from within the pole, a melody of sorts. Placing my hand on the cool metal, I felt vibrations coursing through me, as if the streetlight sought to convey a message. Documenting each visit meticulously, I uncovered a correlation between the dimming intensity and lunar phases, the light nearly extinguishing during the new moon and maintaining stability under the full moon's radiance. Moreover, the light always returned to full brightness precisely 23 seconds after my passage. The streetlight's intrigue gradually wove into my routine, guiding me to approach with a reverent slowness, engaging in a silent dialogue of sorts. I found myself lingering beneath its muted glow, enveloped in its almost ethereal hum, a storyteller from a bygone era. Resisting the urge to seek a rational explanation, I embraced the mystery that seemed tailored for my discovery. Each night as I made my way home, the streetlight awaited, creating a sanctuary of twilight where our silent communion unfolded. In this dance of shadows and light, I found solace in the unknown. Whether an electrical anomaly, a cosmic enigma, or something beyond comprehension, I cherished the fleeting darkness that momentarily connected me to a realm of secrets and revelations. In that fleeting moment of dimmed light, amidst the whispers of the night, I felt a part of a grander narrative, a mystery that unfurled its mystique through the language of shadows and light. Story 22. The heavy rain outside played a hypnotic symphony on the roof of my old country house, setting the stage for another solitary evening. As drops cascaded down the window, they traced serpentine patterns that danced in the flickering candlelight I had kindled to combat encroaching darkness. The gentle wind whispered through the garden trees, rustling the leaves in a natural lullaby. Nestled in my favorite armchair, cradling a steaming cup of tea, I gazed absent-mindedly as wisps of vapor spiraled gracefully into the air. The house echoed its usual chorus of sounds, the faint creak of contracting wood, the rhythmic ticking of the pendulum clock in the entryway, the soft whistle of wind gliding through hidden crevices. Though everything appeared normal, an indefinable unease began to seep into the tranquility of the evening. It was during a quiet sip of tea that I first detected a curious anomaly. The upstairs bedroom window, visible through the hallway mirror's reflection, seemed to emit a peculiar glow, as though a phantom candle flickered within. Yet I knew for certain that no light source resided in that room. Setting down my cup on the small table beside the armchair, I rose slowly and made my way towards the stairs. Each wooden step groaned underfoot, a familiar sound after years of dwelling in this abode. But that night, every creak carried a different resonance, as if the house itself harbored a cryptic message. The air grew chillier as I ascended, a thin veil of moisture clinging to the walls of the upper hallway. Upon reaching the bedroom door, I hesitated before turning the brass handle. Its icy touch sent a shiver down my spine. With a slight squeak, the door swung open, revealing the room cloaked in shadows. The window, the same one I had glimpsed in the mirror, remained shut. However, to my astonishment, the lock began to shift of its own accord, as if nudged by unseen hands. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the window started to open inch by inch, devoid of any visible force propelling it. The breeze that wafted in held no vigor to warrant such movement, and the air it carried bore a sweet, ancient fragrance of dried flowers and aged wood. Approaching cautiously, I watched raindrops enter the room, forming tiny pools on the wooden windowsill. Yet these droplets defied gravity, swirling in airy waltzes before gently alighting on the floor. Amidst this inexplicable display, a curious sight seized my attention. Writing materialized on the fogged window glass as if an invisible hand traced letters onto its surface. The words materialized slowly, too blurred to decipher clearly. Drawn closer, my heart thrummed with a steady, intense rhythm. The curtains stirred softly, though no true draft stirred the room. Their movement mimicked the tranquil, rhythmic breaths of one in slumber. Moonlight filtered through rain-laden clouds, cast dancing shadows on the walls, silent narrators of untold stories. Extending a hand towards the window, I felt the cool outside air caress my fingers. Just as I was about to make contact with the glass, the window closed gently, the same gradual manner in which it had opened. The lock clicked with a delicate finality, and the ancient scent that had permeated the room gradually dissipated. I stood frozen in place for several minutes, attuned to the persistent drumming of rain outside. The room had reverted to its usual appearance, yet an intangible shift had occurred. It was as if the house had sought to reveal a fragment of another realm, one that coexisted alongside our own, visible only during those rare moments when the veil between reality and mystery grew as thin as gossamer. Since that fateful night, whenever rain falls, I find myself ensconced in my armchair, observing the window's reflection in the hallway mirror. Sometimes it remains still, while on other occasions it opens slowly, in a silent ritual that has woven itself into the fabric of my existence. The origin of this phenomenon remains a mystery to me, yet I have learned to embrace it as a part of the enigma that binds me to this ancient dwelling, a secret shared solely between myself and these aged walls. On the stillest of nights, when the wind whispers through the trees and the rain descends like a gentle benediction, I sense a familiar presence, a spectral guardian watching over me. Through a window that unfurls of its own accord, this unseen sentinel chooses to reveal itself, casting a benevolent gaze upon the space we both inhabit. Story 23. The November breeze danced with the dry leaves scattered on the driveway as I gazed at the silhouette of the forsaken mansion silhouetted against the heavy, overcast sky. Dubbed the house that time forgot, it had a history shrouded in mystery. Though they claimed it was never inhabited, whispers of a long-forgotten resident lingered in the air. I approached the weathered gate, feeling the chill of the wrought iron bars under my touch. A musty scent of moss and damp stone filled the air, adding to the eerie aura surrounding the neglected estate. The garden was a chaotic mess of tangled foliage, clawing its way up the crumbling walls. Yet, amidst the neglect, the mansion exuded a haunting elegance that captivated me. In my role as a real estate agent, tasked with assessing the property, I ventured further into the unkempt garden. A peculiar discovery awaited me, faint trails amidst the weeds, hinting at recent activity. Someone had been here despite assurances from the neighbors that the property remained untouched. The front door groaned open with a ghostly creak, revealing an interior cloaked in a bluish gloom seeping through the closed shutters. The air inside was thick, laden with dust and the faint aroma of aged wood. Each step I took on the creaking floorboards echoed through the desolate halls as I explored the main salon. Draped in yellowed sheets, the furniture cast eerie shadows in the dim light. Enormous veiled mirrors adorned the walls, distorting the sparse light and conjuring illusions of movement in their cloudy glass. Ascending the staircase, my hand trailed along the polished wooden banister, worn smooth by the touch of countless hands. A corridor lined with closed doors awaited me on the upper floor, each room a silent witness to bygone days. Documenting the interiors for appraisal, I found them all devoid of life, save for a few shrouded remnants of furniture. It was in the final room that a sense of unease crept over me. A feminine touch lingered in the dust-covered surfaces, as if disturbed by recent contact. A silver brush on the dresser, accompanied by a strand of dark, fresh hair, stood out amidst the stagnant air. The perfectly made bed, with its lace bedspread bearing a faint indentation, hinted at a recent presence. A fleeting movement in the mirror startled me, a fleeting glimpse of a figure seated on the bed, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. Descending the stairs, a sense of urgency spurred me forward, the fading daylight casting deeper shadows across the silent rooms. The mirrors seemed to follow my every move as I hastened towards the exit. Just then, a faint, haunting melody brushed against my ears, a delicate hum drifting from somewhere upstairs. An ancient tune, filled with melancholy, stirred the stillness of the house. Pausing with my hand on the doorknob, I strained to discern reality from imagination. Was it the wind whispering through the shutters or a trick of my mind? With a final glance, I left, closing the heavy door behind me. The garden lay quiet now, the wind hushed to a gentle murmur. As I passed through the gate, a lingering gaze back at the mansion revealed a flicker of movement behind an upstairs window, a fleeting glow vanishing into the darkness. In the days that followed, I meticulously compiled my report on the property, detailing its condition, necessary renovations, and potential market value. Omitting the peculiar discoveries within the house, I instead penned a cryptic note. This property possesses a singular charm that may appeal to a discerning buyer. The mansion lingered on the market for an extended period, a silent sentinel of a forgotten era. Each time I passed by, a spectral figure seemed to flit between the shadowed rooms upstairs, as if suspended in time, awaiting an unknown visitor. Perhaps the truth of the never-inhabited house was not that it had remained empty, but that a presence had never truly departed, eternally bound to its melancholic elegance. Story 24. The snow fell softly outside my quaint antique shop that evening. Each flake twirled gracefully behind the windows, bathed in the warm glow of vintage lamps, casting a cozy and inviting ambience. The old wooden shelves murmured gently as I arranged the aged volumes, harmonizing with the unhurried rhythm of the pendulum clock's hands. The air carried the nostalgic sense of ancient books and beeswax, a fragrance only objects with a rich history can exhale. As I busied myself with the books, the doorbell chimed with a crystalline sound, breaking the tranquil atmosphere. A rush of cold air swept in, carrying a few snowflakes that promptly dissolved on the wooden floor. Turning to greet the visitor, I found myself momentarily perplexed. Standing at the threshold was a tall figure cloaked in darkness, seemingly absorbing the light around them. Their face was partially obscured by a wide-brimmed hat and a gray wool scarf, emanating an air of mystery. "Good evening," I murmured, masking a subtle unease creeping up my spine. The figure, unresponsive, glided gracefully among the shelves, their gloved hands delicately skimming over the displayed artifacts. There was a mesmerizing quality to their movements, as if they were part of a silent dance, attuned to a rhythm only they could hear. I couldn't help but be captivated by their every gesture, noticing how the light seemed to behave peculiarly in their presence. Shadows deepened and thickened, possessing a life of their own. Pausing before an antique mirror from the 18th century, the customer's gloved fingers traced the ornate golden frame with deliberate care. The silence within the shop grew weighty, punctuated only by the languid ticking of the clock, each beat stretching longer than the last. Attempting to catch their reflection in the mirror, I was unsettled to find only the shelf behind them reflected back, as if they were invisible. Approaching tentatively, the floor creaking beneath my steps, I inquired softly, "Can I assist you in finding something specific?" The figure turned slowly towards me, their face obscured by shadows under the hat. With a fluid motion, they produced a yellowed paper from their coat pocket, unfolding it meticulously on the counter beside the register. The list, written in elegant, antiquated script, detailed enigmatic objects: a mirror that remembers, a clock that counts backwards, a key that opens forgotten doors. Reading the list, I felt a chill settle in the air, my breath forming misty clouds. The objects on the shelves seemed to hum faintly, as if recognizing a kinship with the mysterious visitor. "I regret to inform you," I whispered, "that I do not possess these particular items." The figure remained motionless for a prolonged moment before nodding slowly. Retrieving the paper with grace, they tucked it back into their coat and made their way to the door. Before departing, they paused, turning slightly. A whisper, more of a thought than a voice, emerged from beneath the scarf. "You will." It wasn't a question, but a statement of certainty. The bell tolled as they exited, its tone deeper, resonating from a distance. Outside, the snow continued its descent, yet for a fleeting moment, the flakes appeared suspended in time, as if the world had paused. Later that night, after closing the shop, I examined the antique mirror closely. Its reflective surface seemed to hold secrets within its silvery depths. The pendulum clock, faithful timekeeper, had frozen precisely at the moment the enigmatic customer had entered. Since that evening, as dusk falls and shadows lengthen, I find myself drawn to the door, awaiting the bell's chime. Every object in the shop, too, seems expectant, as if we all anticipate the return of that mysterious visitor. In an antique shop, every item carries a tale, and perhaps, just maybe, some objects are yet to embark on their own narratives. As the nights pass, I remain vigilant, for who knows what stories lie in wait, concealed within the artifacts of time. Story 25. In the soft embrace of a misty autumn morning, I found myself tending to the fallen leaves in my garden. The air carried a gentle chill, the earthy scent of damp soil mingling with the delicate fragrance of chrysanthemums that bloomed under my care. Silence enveloped me, broken only by the whisper of leaves underfoot and the distant song of an early rising bird. As I worked near the weathered stone bench, a glimmer caught my eye amidst the foliage. A subtle shimmer, like a dewdrop capturing a sunbeam, beckoned me closer. Brushing aside the wet leaves, I uncovered an antique necklace, its beauty a testament to fine craftsmanship. An oval pendant, adorned with intricate floral designs and a captivating blue stone at its heart, seemed to radiate a mesmerizing light. Cradling the necklace in my hands, I marveled at its weightlessness and the cool touch against my skin. It was a piece unknown to me, a mystery that had found its way into my solitary abode after 2 decades of solitude. The azure gem held a peculiar luminosity, as though harboring its own inner glow. That evening, after tenderly cleansing the necklace, I placed it upon my nightstand. Moonlight spilled through the window, casting ethereal shadows that danced upon the walls as I drifted into slumber. Throughout the night, I stirred from my dreams, a haunting melody lingering at the edge of consciousness. A distant music box, sweet and melancholic, played a tune that dissolved upon my waking. Dawn revealed the necklace's altered position on the nightstand, a subtle shift that hinted at unseen visitors. In daylight, the blue stone appeared dimmer, yet a faint warmth emanated from the metal, a stark departure from its icy touch before. Curiosity stirred within me, prompting a quest for the necklace's origins. Days passed, marked by subtle disturbances within my home. Objects shifted in the night, photographs askew, and the elusive melody grew clearer yet remained just beyond reach. One twilight hour, with the necklace by my side, I discerned light footfalls from the upper floor. Ascending the stairs with bated breath, I found no soul but stumbled upon a forgotten chamber. Within lay an ornate wooden box, its design mirroring that of the necklace. Nestled within faded velvet, a photograph depicted a young woman donning an identical necklace, accompanied by a cryptic inscription, "To remember the happy days in the garden." With each passing night, the music box's melody serenaded me, no longer a disconcerting presence but a comforting embrace. The house itself seemed to hum a lullaby, a melody that caressed the quiet hours. At twilight, in the garden's fading light, a phantom figure danced on the edge of sight, a specter of memories yearning to materialize. The woman in the photograph remained a mystery, her connection to the necklace and my garden shrouded in enigma. Embracing the unknown, I welcomed the presence of this spectral tale, akin to the ebb and flow of seasons and the march of time. The necklace, a silent guardian, still graces my nightstand, and on tranquil nights when the moon reigns high and the wind whispers through the foliage, faint laughter mingles with the music box's haunting melody, a whisper of joy from days long past, echoing in the hush of night. Story 26. The grandfather clock in my study told midnight with its deep, resonant chimes, each sound reverberating through the hushed air like gentle ripples on a still pond. Nestled in my worn leather armchair, a weathered book lay open in my lap, while the soft patter of rain against the window pane provided a soothing backdrop. The old house creaked softly, its ancient wooden frame settling into the peace of the night. As I gazed towards the hallway door, illuminated by the warm glow of my reading lamp, a subtle sense of unfamiliarity crept over me. Something about it seemed altered tonight, though I struggled to pinpoint the exact change. Perhaps the brass handle gleamed differently, or the wood's grain appeared shifted. Despite my 15 years in this house, the door now felt oddly foreign to me. Setting aside my book, marked by a delicate silk ribbon, I rose from my chair and ventured towards the door. The floor felt cool beneath my slippers, the chill creeping up through the soles. With each step closer, the air seemed to grow colder, as if a breath of winter lingered in that corner of my home. When my fingers brushed the handle, a surprising warmth greeted me, stark against the surrounding chill. The door swung open smoothly at my touch, revealing the familiar hallway beyond. Everything appeared unchanged: the faded wallpaper, the worn carpet, the familiar array of framed photographs adorning the walls. Dismissing my unease as mere imagination, I closed the door and returned to my seat, shaking my head at my own fanciful thoughts. That night, my dreams were filled with doors. They materialized in improbable locations amidst lush gardens, hovering in the sky, standing solitary on deserted beaches. Each door bore the same warm brass handle as the one in my hallway, a touch of familiarity amidst the surreal landscapes of my slumber. With the arrival of dawn, I carried on with my routine, the hallway door barely garnering a passing glance. Yet as evening descended and the sun dipped below the horizon, a subtle anomaly caught my eye. The door appeared lighter in hue, as though aged by decades overnight. The brass handle now bore a patina previously unseen, adding a touch of antiquity to its presence. Approaching the door once more, I scrutinized it with newfound curiosity. The wood had indeed transformed a lighter shade with a unique grain pattern that eluded my memory. Even the hinges had shifted, their iron black now transformed into a burnished copper hue. And yet, upon opening the door, the hallway remained unchanged, a constant in the midst of subtle alterations. Night after night, the door underwent gradual metamorphoses, its appearance shifting imperceptibly. Sometimes it aged, other times it seemed rejuvenated. The handle would subtly reposition, the frame gaining or losing intricate carvings. I began meticulously documenting these changes in a journal, capturing each detail with precision. The door never altered under my watchful gaze. It was during the deepest hours of night, when the house slumbered and my attention waned, that these transformations took place. Determined to unravel the mystery, I embarked on a vigilant night of observation, positioned in my armchair to face the door directly. As the grandfather clock ticked away the hours and weariness threatened to overtake me, a flicker of light at 3:17 a.m. signaled a subtle shift. In that fleeting moment of darkness, a change overtook the door. The warm oak gave way to rich mahogany, intricate silver inlays dancing across its surface like ethereal patterns. Drawn to these new details, I extended my hand towards the handle, now fashioned from carved crystal instead of brass. Yet a peculiar sensation halted me in my tracks. The air hummed with a gentle vibration, a lingering echo that pulsed around the door. And then the realization struck me: the door bore no keyhole, a feature that had always been present in its previous iterations. In a state of bewilderment, I scoured my journal for any mention of the keyhole, only to find it absent from my meticulous recordings. Had I overlooked such a fundamental detail, or was there a deeper mystery at play, eluding my grasp? Now, as twilight descends each evening, I find myself pondering the enigmatic door and its nightly transformations. Occasionally, I catch fleeting glimpses of alternate hallways through the slender gap beneath it, corridors adorned with unfamiliar carpets, wallpapers, and photographs. Yet whenever I open the door, my own hallway awaits, steadfast in its familiarity. The urge to rearrange the photographs to test the reality of my surroundings tugs at me, but an unspoken warning holds me back, a whispered caution from the recesses of my mind. The spaces between certainty and uncertainty beckon, tempting me to peer too closely into the unknown. Night after night, the door continues its subtle evolution, each transformation a silent spectacle in the quiet hours before dawn. I have grown accustomed to these nocturnal changes, finding solace in their quiet mysteries. Perhaps it is not the door that alters, but my perception of it that shifts with each passing night. Both truth and illusion dance in the shadows, leaving me to ponder the secrets that lie beyond the threshold of my perception. Story 27, the gentle rain tapped against the windows of my quaint countryside home, crafting a soothing melody that harmonized with the soft creaking of the wooden floor beneath my steps. It was an autumn evening when the line between reality and reverie appeared thin, almost translucent. The leaves of the trees swayed in the night, casting elusive shadows on the walls of the hallway bathed in a hazy glow from the misty windows. Nestled in my beloved armchair, cradling a cup of now-chilled chamomile tea, I absent-mindedly watched as the light from the floor lamp painted a golden halo on the ground. A peculiar aura enveloped the evening, a subtle yet persistent feeling that eluded my grasp. Perhaps it was the heaviness in the air or the profound silence of the house, almost tangible in its depth. I stood up slowly, intrigued by a flicker caught in my peripheral vision. The hallway leading to the bedroom seemed elongated, stretching beyond its usual boundaries. The shadows in the corners appeared denser, imbued with a life of their own. Pausing at the threshold of the living room, I gazed into the deepening darkness that veiled the far end of the hallway. The temperature dropped gradually as I ventured forth. The floor underfoot echoed with unfamiliar sounds, as though I trod upon a foreign terrain. The ancestral photographs adorning the walls seemed to regard me with a new gaze, as if the familiar faces had undergone a subtle transformation. Midway down the hallway, a peculiar scent wafted towards me, redolent of ancient books and damp wood foreign to my abode. I turned to the window on my right, observing the intricate patterns etched by rain on the glass, patterns that seemed to follow a cryptic yet orderly design. And there it was, a shadow darker than the rest, gliding with an unnatural elegance across the opposing wall. It bore no source, possessing a solidity akin to condensed mist. Moving with a hesitant grace, it seemed aware of my presence. My breath slowed as I observed, not gripped by fear, but rather by a sense of recognition, as if that presence had always lingered, awaiting acknowledgement. The shadow halted by the guest room door, assuming a faintly human form. Taking another step forward, I noticed a subtle ripple in its outline, as though reacting to my proximity. The rain-esque patter had evolved into a constant murmur, as if striving to convey a message. I strained to listen, momentarily discerning unfamiliar yet oddly understandable words. The atmosphere grew colder, though not unwelcoming. It enveloped me like a cool silk sheet on a balmy summer eve. The shadow resumed its motion, gliding towards me in a slow, fluid dance. I stood transfixed as it neared, halting just a few steps away. In the tranquil of the house, my heartbeat echoed steady and calm. The shadow inclined slightly, a gesture reminiscent of a greeting. Moved by an inexplicable impulse, I raised a hand. Mirroring my action, the shadow seemed to extend a hand from its nebulous form. Though no physical contact occurred, a warmth lingered where our hands almost met. With the same grace it had appeared, the shadow began to dissipate, dispersing like smoke carried by an unseen breeze. In its wake lingered a faint scent of jasmine and a profound sense of tranquility. I stood in the hallway, suspended in a timeless moment as the rain-esque song faded gradually. Upon returning to the living room, I found my tea still warm, as if time had paused during our encounter in the corridor. Since that evening, on rainy nights when I traverse that hallway, I find myself attuned to the shadows. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of that familiar figure dancing just beyond my line of sight. The mystery of the shadow remains unsolved, yet its presence left not a trace of unease, but an understanding that some enigmas require no explanation. The hallway now cradles this secret, and on silent, rain-kissed nights I await, with a blend of curiosity and peace, the next encounter with the shadow dancing beyond the corridor. Story 28. The winter twilight draped my bedroom walls in shades of royal purple as a gentle rain tapped against the window panes in a soothing rhythm. A flickering candle on my antique vanity mirror, passed down from my grandmother, cast dancing shadows that swayed with the growing darkness. The fragrance of melting wax mingled with the comforting scent of crackling firewood downstairs, enveloping the room in a warm embrace. Amid this tranquil moment of reflection, a peculiar sight caught my attention. While arranging my hair before the mirror, I caught a glimpse of a tall, slender figure moving behind me, like a ghostly apparition gliding through the air. Instinctively, I turned around, only to find the room empty. Returning my gaze to the mirror, I dismissed it as a mere trick of light and shadow. In the days that followed, I found myself drawn to the reflections surrounding me. Whether it was the gleaming surface of a freshly polished table, the glass window at dusk, or even the tiny rearview mirror in my car, they all seemed to capture fleeting images of that enigmatic presence. It was as though a parallel world existed within these reflections, where this silent figure observed me with a patient curiosity. Devoid of distinct features, it emitted a soft, silvery glow, almost ethereal in nature. At times, a faint smile seemed to materialize, while on other occasions, subtle hand movements suggested a desire to communicate. Rather than fear, a sense of familiarity washed over me, as if this presence had always been a part of my life, waiting to be acknowledged. One tranquil evening, while engrossed in a book in my favorite armchair, I noticed the figure in the window's reflection appeared more defined than usual. Instead of vanishing upon direct observation, it lingered, almost as if anchored in the stillness of the room. A faint rustle, akin to silk caressed by an unseen breeze, reached my ears despite the absence of any wind. Slowly rising from my seat, I drew closer to the window. The figure mirrored my movements, drawing near from the other side of the glass. Details began to emerge. Its attire flowed gracefully, and its movements exuded a mesmerizing elegance, akin to a dance suspended in midair. Extending a hand towards me, I mirrored the gesture almost instinctively. In that moment, a realization washed over me. Each appearance of the figure brought forth a profound tranquility. The ambient sounds softened, colors muted, and time itself seemed to linger in a suspended state. It was as if this presence carried with it a fragment of a serene realm, where the boundaries between wakefulness and dreams blurred. No longer driven by fear or curiosity, I actively sought out reflections, yearning to rediscover the peace that accompanied the figure. It seemed to manifest during moments of quiet introspection, when worries and anxieties faded into the background. It was as though it possessed an innate understanding of when I needed its comforting presence the most. Over time, the figure in the reflections evolved into a silent companion, weaving through my days with a gentle grace. I refrained from unraveling its true essence or purpose, for some enigmas, I believed, were meant to remain unsolved. Sometimes the very mystery itself held a greater value than any conceivable explanation. Even now, as the amber glow of the sunset bathes the room in a warm embrace, casting elongated shadows upon the walls, I pause to peer into the reflections that surround me. And in those tranquil moments when the world hushes into a profound stillness, I behold it still, a luminous figure twirling amidst the reflections, carrying within it a profound serenity and a gentle reminder that certain mysteries are best left untouched. Story 29. The soft glow of a flickering candle danced upon the ancient stone walls as I descended into the depths of the cellar. Each step I took echoed with a familiar creak, a sound that had been my companion on countless trips to retrieve Grandma's preserves. The air was cool and musty, carrying with it the earthy aroma of ages past, invoking memories of my childhood days spent in this hidden sanctuary. On this particular evening, a subtle shift in the atmosphere caught my attention. The candle flame flickered mysteriously, defying the stillness of the air, while a thin layer of dust seemed to cloak every surface, despite my recent visits. Shadows stretched and swayed along the walls, reaching out towards the darkness that beckoned from the depths below. Pausing midway down the stairs, a peculiar sensation washed over me. The wooden shelves, which usually ended within a few paces, now appeared to extend further into the unknown. The flickering light struggled to penetrate the elongated corridor that unfolded before my eyes, shrouded in an eerie silence broken only by the steady rhythm of my own heartbeat and the distant drip of water seeping through the ancient stones. Driven by a curiosity that outweighed my apprehension, I pressed on. The jars of preserves lining the shelves gleamed faintly in the wavering light, but instead of familiar labels, I found myself confronted with dates of bygone eras 1980, 1960, 1940. Some labels had faded beyond recognition, lost to the passage of time. As I ventured deeper, the air grew colder, carrying with it a scent of damp earth intermingled with the faint fragrance of ancient manuscripts. The shelves continued their spectral journey into the abyss, revealing walls adorned with intricate patterns of ancient bricks and cryptic symbols, etched with a precision that defied the era of the cellar's construction. Coming to a halt before a peculiar shelf, my gaze fixated on a singular jar. Crafted from obsidian glass that seemed to swallow the very light around it, the label remained remarkably intact, bearing a perplexing date, 1820. Trembling, I lifted the jar, and in the hushed cellar, a subtle whisper not of words, but of the passage of time itself brushed against my senses. Turning slowly, a fleeting vision of blurred figures flitted at the edge of my perception, like wisps of memory yearning to take form. Sensing a shift in the currents of time, I resolved it was time to retreat. Yet as I turned towards the ascending stairs, a disorienting realization gripped me. The distance I had traversed had multiplied, the light at the staircase summit now a distant beacon in the obsidian void. Guided by a sense of calm that stemmed from childhood recollections, I ascended, each step a deliberate act of grounding in the shifting reality. The shelves gradually reverted to their familiar state, the dates on the jars aligning with the present, and the once cryptic walls returning to their mundane facade. Reaching the comforting glow of the kitchen, I placed the jar marked 1820 on the bottom stair, a tangible memento of my extraordinary journey. As I sipped on a warm cup of tea, the aroma of blackberry jam enveloped me, a blend of sweetness and antiquity that transcended mere senses. Since that enigmatic night, whenever I descend into the cellar, a lingering anticipation tugs at my consciousness. The familiar stairs and shelves remain unchanged, yet beneath the veneer of normalcy, a whisper of temporal secrets lingers in the air. In moments of dim light and profound silence, the cellar seems to beckon, hinting at untold mysteries waiting to be unveiled. And so I ponder the infinite corridor that may lie beyond, where time itself ebbs and flows in enigmatic rhythms. Perhaps one day I shall summon the courage to venture forth, to unravel the mysteries that dwell at the precipice where past, present, and future intertwine in a dance of eternal secrets. Story 30. Night had embraced the ancient countryside house, cloaking it in a shroud of profound tranquility. Nestled in my cherished armchair beside the crackling fireplace, I observed the shadows waltzing across the walls as the flickering flames consumed the logs with a gentle fervor. The cozy warmth enveloped me like a snug embrace, while outside the autumn breeze tenderly caressed the leaves of the trees. In this moment of serene perfection, a peculiar sound pierced the stillness, a tinkling, childlike laughter wafting down from the upper floor of the house. The laughter, resembling silver bells, caught my attention, prompting me to pause and allow it to intertwine with the crackling of the fire. There was an innocence to the laughter, a joyousness that filled the air with a melodic essence. Despite its unfamiliarity, it held no hint of menace. Rather, it exuded a sense of pure delight. Yet in my solitary abode where 2 decades had passed without the presence of children, the laughter stirred a curiosity within me, gently nudging aside the drowsiness that threatened to lull me to sleep. With deliberate movements, I rose from my seat, relishing the sensation of my feet meeting the plush Persian rug. The aged floorboards emitted soft creaks under my weight as I made my way towards the staircase. The glow of the candles I had lit in the living room cast a soft, inviting light, casting my elongated shadow in a graceful dance upon the walls. Ascending the stairs, I noticed a subtle chill permeating the air, not harsh, but rather a tender caress upon the skin, akin to the gentle touch of a sea breeze. Once again, the laughter echoed, closer this time, emanating from the guest room, a seldom visited chamber furnished with antiquated pieces draped in ghostly white sheets that fluttered as if stirred by unseen hands. The door stood slightly ajar, allowing a silvery light to spill through the crack, unlike any illumination found elsewhere in the house. It possessed a warmth distinct from moonlight and lacked the harshness of electric bulbs. It pulsed softly, akin to a tranquil heartbeat. Pushing the door open, the ancient would croon a familiar tune as the room unfolded before me, bathed in that ethereal luminescence. The draped furniture formed gentle, comforting shapes, resembling clouds against a clear sky. And perched on the windowsill, I beheld a sight that stole my breath, a nebulous form, not quite defined, but a play of light and shadow that hinted at a childlike presence. The laughter chimed once more, this time emanating from the luminous apparition. No fear gripped me, only a profound sense of awe and wonder. The light child seemed to frolic with the beams it radiated, painting luminous patterns on the walls as though crafting with light itself. Drawing nearer, I noted a familiarity in its fluid movements, recognizing echoes of my childhood play within its graceful gestures. A revelation dawned upon me with the sweetness of a forgotten memory. The crystalline, pure laughter belonged to my own childhood self. Time seemed to stretch and warp as I observed this surreal spectacle. The light child continued its silent play, interrupted sporadically by that melodious laughter, now a nostalgic echo from the distant past. I refrained from speaking or disrupting the enchantment, fearing to shatter the tranquility and nostalgia that enveloped the room. Gradually, the silvery light began to wane, akin to the setting sun on a winter evening. The childlike figure grew increasingly ethereal until naught remained but a faint glow. The final laughter I heard was a whisper, a gentle farewell before dissolving entirely into the darkness. I lingered in the room for what felt like an eternity, cocooned in a serene silence. The sheets on the furniture stilled, the air returned to its customary temperature, yet an intangible shift had occurred. The once forgotten guest room, a repository of dusty memories, now held a precious secret within its walls. Returning to my armchair by the fireplace, the dwindling fire casting a soft glow, I acknowledged that the events of that night would forever remain a mystery. Was it a dream, a recollection, or perhaps a profound message from a bygone era, manifested through a child's laughter in the shadows? Each time I passed by the guest room thereafter, I paused to listen. On the stillest of nights, a faint echo of that crystalline laughter seemed to drift through the air, a soothing lullaby guiding me towards slumber. And with a smile, I allowed the enigma to persist, a treasured secret shared between myself and the phantom child who laughed in the dark. Story 31, the gentle patter of autumn rain whispered against my office window, creating a soothing symphony as I delved into my work. On these serene evenings, time seemed to slow, cocooned in a melody woven by raindrops. The warm glow of my desk lamp bathed the aged paper of historical manuscripts I was organizing for the city's archive in a soft golden light. And then she appeared. A solitary figure traversing the square below, sheltered beneath a vibrant scarlet umbrella, a vivid contrast against the muted hues of fall. Her steps carried a mysterious rhythm, harmonizing effortlessly with the rain's cadence. Each night, like clockwork, the woman with the red umbrella graced the square with her presence. Her nightly passage became a routine I awaited with intrigue. Yet her face remained veiled, obscured by the umbrella's shadow and the mist of rain that trailed her faithfully. One evening, as she crossed the square, something shifted. She paused at the square's center and fleetingly turned towards my window. A fleeting smile graced her pale features, illuminated by the dim street lamps, before she continued her journey into the evening haze. In the days that followed, peculiar occurrences unsettled my study. Watermarks appeared on the documents I handled, as if touched by rain-dampened fingers. The delicate fragrance of antique roses lingered in the air during evening hours, permeating the room despite closed windows. One night, a forgotten black and white photograph materialized on my desk. It depicted the square half a century ago, capturing a figure with a red umbrella amidst the crowd, the sole splash of color in the aged image. Inscribed on the back was a date, October 15, 1973. Delving into archives revealed the tragic tale of Sarah Thompson, a young librarian from decades past who shared my workspace. She was renowned for her red umbrella and love for ancient texts, meeting a sorrowful end in that very square on a rainy night much like the present. As I immersed myself in Sarah's history, the scent of roses intensified. Rainfall outside seemed to morph into a melodic hum, as if a forgotten lullaby echoed softly. Pages of documents fluttered as though caressed by an unseen breeze. Glancing up, I beheld her nearer than ever before, her red umbrella now closed, her features clear. Kind eyes met mine, a serene smile gracing her lips. No fear gripped me, only a profound sense of melancholy and connection. From that night onward, the woman with the red umbrella never traversed the square. Yet on rainy nights when the archive falls silent, shadows dancing, I sense her presence. The echo of her steps, the faint perfume of roses linger in the air. Occasionally, browsing through aged manuscripts, I discover fresh water droplets, as if rain-kissed fingers had just graced the pages. I often ponder if Sarah still watches over her cherished books, if her spirit wanders in the rain with her red umbrella. This tale remains mine alone, a sweet secret shared with the library's shadows. And when raindrops tap against the windows, a smile tugs at my lips. For in the tapestry of time, I believe a woman with a red umbrella continues her eternal journey, a silent guardian of knowledge and history. Story 32, the raindrops tapping on the roof of the ancestral home orchestrated a soothing symphony as I sifted through the final remnants of my grandmother's legacy. The atmosphere was heavy with wistful memories, mingled with the fragrance of ancient wood and swirling dust particles basking in the golden hues of the dusk peeking through the soft, cream curtains. Each object I handled seemed to whisper tales of days long gone, painting vivid images of bygone eras. And it was in that moment, when I reached the bottom of the last box, that I stumbled upon a weathered photo album bound in dark, aged leather. The cover bore the marks of time at its edges, yet retained a delicate softness that only years can bestow. With gentle fingertips, I placed the album on the vintage oak table in the living room, where the musty scent of old paper and a hint of mildew wafted from its pages. Every monochrome photograph within unveiled snippets of family life, weddings, birthdays, carefree summer vacations. A nostalgic smile graced my lips as I recognized the youthful faces of my ancestors, tracing resemblances through the generations. The rustle of turning pages harmonized with the patter of rain against the window panes, but it was a particular picture, captured in the garden of the house during a sunlit luncheon, that held me captive. There, amidst familiar faces, my grandmother sat elegantly in a floral dress, surrounded by her siblings. Yet standing slightly apart from the jovial group was a mysterious figure, cloaked in a light dress that cascaded to her ankles, her features veiled by the shadow of a broad-brimmed hat. A stranger in the midst of kin. Intrigued, I extracted the photograph from the album to scrutinize it closer. On the back, my grandmother's elegant script bore a solitary date, summer 1956, offering no further clues about the enigmatic presence. As I scrutinized the image, a chill breeze swept through the room, causing the curtains to dance in the fading light of dusk. With a flick of the antique table lamp's switch, a warm, gentle glow bathed the room, casting a soft halo over the photograph. Under the new illumination, a disquieting detail caught my eye. The mysterious figure's shadow defied logic, casting in a direction opposite to the rest, as though bathed in a separate light source. A shiver traced my spine as a long-forgotten conversation between my mother and aunt resurfaced, hinting at a woman who had briefly graced the family's presence before vanishing without a trace. The rain outside seemed to crescendo, weaving a hypnotic spell around me. The figure in the photograph appeared to sharpen, while the background blurred as though she yearned to convey a message frozen in time. Turning the photograph, I detected faint, almost invisible markings in the bottom corner, barely discernible words etched with delicate pressure. Tilting the paper beneath the lamplight, I deciphered the cryptic message, "She always sees." Returning the photograph to its rightful place in the album, I found myself unable to close it shut. An inexplicable urge nudged me to linger over that haunting image, as if it held a cryptic tale waiting to unfold. How many untold stories lay buried within these walls? How many secrets were immortalized by the lens of a camera and veiled in the mists of time? As night enveloped the house in its tranquil embrace, the rain continued its gentle serenade. Seated in the armchair by the window, the open album resting on my lap, I delved into a reverie. Who was she, that enigmatic woman? What sights had she beheld, and did she still watch over us, unseen yet ever present? Deciding to leave the album ajar on the table, I readied myself for sleep, stealing a final glance from the threshold. In the flickering lamplight, it almost seemed as though the figure had shifted, as if she turned her gaze towards me. Yet it could have been a mere trick of shadows, a mystery destined to linger, safeguarded within the sepia pages of a cherished family album. Story 33. In the quiet cocoon of my study, the weariness of the day slowly dissolved as I entered. The soft amber light of the desk lamp cast gentle shadows, illuminating the bookshelves that held stories of ages past. The scent of old paper and ink embraced me like an old friend as I sank into my worn leather chair, the day's burdens melting away. My eyes fell upon my old diary, a cherished relic passed down from my grandmother. Its weathered brown cover and yellowed pages held the whispers of my soul. But on this night, something peculiar caught my eye. The last page I had penned was no longer blank. Delicate handwriting, unfamiliar to me, danced across the paper, weaving a tale I had no memory of writing. Drawn in by the mysterious words, I found myself transfixed. The narrative painted a scene mirroring the very room I was in, the patter of rain against the window adding a soothing cadence to the air. Shadows flickered and danced with the flickering lamp, creating a mesmerizing ballet on the walls. As I read on, the words seemed to anticipate my every move, as if a silent observer guided my hand. Curiosity urged him to turn the page, the script beckoned, and as if under a spell I obeyed. New words materialized before my eyes, capturing the essence of my being in exquisite detail. Each sensation, each nuance of the moment was transcribed by an unseen hand, weaving a tapestry of my existence. I rose from my chair, but the pages continued to fill with a life of their own. The titles of books I didn't recall owning were listed, the room itself seeming to shift and morph with each passing sentence. Seated on the couch, enveloped in the symphony of rain, I felt as though a veil had been lifted, revealing a reality beyond the tangible. The words on the page evolved, delving into the recesses of my memories, unearthing secrets long forgotten. A silent dialogue unfolded between me and the diary, the boundaries between past and present blurring with each passing moment. There was no fear, only a profound sense of peace and curiosity, guiding me deeper into the labyrinth of my own mind. As midnight approached, I realized hours had slipped by in this ethereal communion. The final words on the page bore a cryptic message. Some mysteries don't need to be solved to be understood. With a gentle touch, I closed the diary, feeling a shift within me that transcended words. The rain outside whispered its lullaby, the night enfolding the study in its embrace. I wondered if the morning light would reveal the same words or if they would vanish like a wisp of smoke. In the quiet of the night, I knew that within me something had shifted, a deeper understanding taking root. The study stood silent, the lamp casting its timeless glow, a silent sentinel to the enigma that had unfolded. As I bid the room farewell, I carried with me the knowledge that some mysteries are meant to be cradled in the heart, their magic undimmed by the light of day. And with that thought, I closed the door, leaving the whispers of the night to weave their spell once more. Story 34, the night lay still, veiled in a delicate mist that swirled like a ghostly dance. Nestled in my cherished armchair, the rich burgundy velvet enveloping me, I immersed myself in a world of words under the gentle glow of an antique lamp. The rhythmic ticking of the pendulum clock filled the room with a hypnotic cadence, harmonizing with the comforting warmth radiating from the crackling fireplace. Amid this serene moment of tranquility, a peculiar sensation stirred within me. It began as a fleeting whisper of movement at the edge of my vision. Lifting my gaze from the book, I beheld my reflection in the aged mirror's surface. The ornate golden frame, adorned with intricate floral motifs, shimmered softly in the flickering firelight. A subtle tremor traversed my spine as I scrutinized the mirrored image before me. Something felt amiss, subtly askew. Tilting my head slightly, I observed as my reflection mimicked the movement with a scarcely perceptible delay, as if striving to replicate rather than reflect my actions organically. I endeavored to attribute it to fatigue or the playful interplay of shadows cast by the dancing flames. Yet a disquieting realization dawned upon me the longer I scrutinized. When I raised my right hand, the reflection hesitated momentarily before mimicking the gesture. A faint delay shadowed its every move, as though engaged in a mimicry dance of its own. The crackling of wood in the fireplace took on an ominous tenor, as if bearing a hidden message. The air thickened around me, pregnant with an unspoken tension that prompted me to draw each breath with deliberate slowness. A fragrance mingled in the room, a blend of candle wax, ancient tomes, and faded memories, evoking a sense of timelessness. Rising from the armchair with measured intent, I observed as my reflection mirrored my actions, its movements possessing an unnatural fluidity, akin to a choreographed performance rather than spontaneous emulation. The mirrored eyes gazed back at me, seemingly harboring enigmatic secrets veiled from my consciousness. Drawing nearer to the mirror, I discerned further disconcerting disparities. The reflected room bore subtle divergences from reality books arranged in a different order, unfamiliar objects occupying the shelves. An aged photograph, once depicting a serene seascape, now presented a blurred countenance fixated upon me with an unsettling gaze. The pendulum of the clock continued its metronomic swing, yet in the reflection, time ebbed at a languid pace, as though ensnared in an altered continuum beyond the looking glass. Shadows cast by the flickering flames cavorted upon the walls, weaving spectral shapes that hinted at silent observers. Tentatively, I extended a hand towards the chill surface of the mirror, meeting the mirror image's outstretched finger in a ghostly communion. While my touch perceived the icy glass, the reflection's countenance bespoke of an entirely distinct sensation. Retreating from the mirror, I beheld a momentary stillness in the mirrored visage, as if contemplating whether to follow suit. When it eventually moved, its actions diverged further from my own, as if gradually asserting an autonomy of its own volition. Resolving to shroud the mirror with a swath of old velvet discovered within a drawer, I glimpsed what appeared to be a cryptic smile gracing the reflection's lips, a visage not my own. Concealed beneath the velvet shroud, that disquieting doppelganger of myself remained obscured. Since that fateful night, the mirror has remained veiled, yet in the hushed depths of the night, whispers of unseen movements linger beyond the cloth's embrace, as though a parallel existence unfolds in tandem with my own within that mirrored realm. During the tranquil hours when the house slumbers in profound silence, I ponder the enigma of that reflection, ensconced behind the glass and silver veil. The veracity of that eerie encounter eludes me, straddling the realms of reality and illusion. With each passing before a looking glass, a lingering uncertainty eclipses my reflection, casting doubt upon the authenticity of the mirrored self. Perhaps in that otherworldly reflection, a specter dwells, a phantom so adept at imitation that it blurs the boundaries between what is perceived and what truly exists. Story 35, The Night's Whisper. The gentle breeze whispered through the night, carrying the scent of earth and blooming flowers. Nestled in my cozy armchair, I savored the quietude, attuned to the ancient house's soft murmurs. The wooden frames murmured tales of yore, as if eager to share their secrets with a willing listener. Amid the tranquil hush, a rhythmic thud resonated from the upper hallway, a sound akin to a door knocker swaying gently in the wind, yet possessing a strange regularity that entranced rather than disturbed. The warm glow of the reading lamp painted dancing shadows on the wallpaper, conjuring fleeting figures that seemed to dance in the flickering light. Setting aside my book, I focused on the persistent beat, its hypnotic rhythm drawing me upward. Each step on the creaking staircase seemed to elicit a response from the house itself, as though guiding me towards the source of the mysterious sound. Moonlight filtered through tall windows, casting a silvery sheen on the dimly lit corridor, where the air carried whispers of aged wood and beeswax. Following the rhythmic pulse, I reached the threshold of the ancient library. The door, always closed, was accompanied by the steady knocking of the brass knocker against the solid wood. No breeze stirred the air. The windows remained tightly shut. Mesmerized, I watched as the heavy knocker swung back and forth, as if moved by an unseen hand with infinite patience. Approaching cautiously, I was transfixed by the rhythmic motion, each beat weaving a mysterious melody that echoed through the silent halls. The cadence grew clearer, hinting at a pattern beyond comprehension. With a touch, the cold brass handle yielded, yet the door seemed to resist, as if held back by an unseen force. Seated on the floor beside the door, I surrendered to the enchanting rhythm, allowing it to envelop me in its wordless narrative. Lost in a reverie of ancient tomes and forgotten lore, I drifted into a realm where time held no sway. The sound merged with my breath, synchronizing with the nocturnal pulse of the house. As dawn's light painted the hallway in ethereal hues, the knocker ceased its dance, shrouded in silence as if it had never stirred. Rising slowly, limbs heavy from the hours spent in rapt contemplation, I found the door yielding effortlessly to my touch. Within the library, unchanged from the previous day, an open book beckoned on the antique desk, its pages blank and pristine, awaiting a tale untold. Since that mysterious night, the brass knocker has remained still, yet on quiet evenings, a faint echo of its rhythmic beat lingers in the air. It whispers of forgotten melodies, as if the house itself yearns to recall a long-lost harmony hidden within the fabric of time.